All right. Hello, Fortina's brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Ministry Revealed. It is January 9th, 2026, and we are counting them down, aren't we? We have our eyes set to later this month. We know why. We know it's revealed us to this point. And until that comes, though, we're going to continue to diligently seek and search and share and reach out and do what we can. And today is going to be another one of those massive deep dives that is a part two to the last one called The Beginnings. This one I would assume is called The Midst. Excuse me. Is going to be called The Midst, and it's going to cover a period of 8 years. I'll kind of explain that a little bit later as we go in. We'll touch in a moment as to where we last left off, and then we'll get into where we're going. But I wanted to remind you in this too that, we're covering a lot. See all these tabs here? From right here all the way across, we're covering each one of those tabs. In fact, there's certain tabs I just don't want to delete to bring up and remind myself to bring up. So I could have covered all 70 tabs I could have opened for this teaching and still not had enough. I mentioned that in the last one too. There is so much revelation that we've been blessed to receive over the past 8 years, just the spirit leading that it's not just given. It's not visions or audibles or dreams or any of those things. It's just the spirit leading in the diligence of these things. We're going to talk about something as we get to about the midway point of it, about a teaching that first was revealed to me back in May of 2018. I had no idea it was in May of 2018. I would have thought, oh, maybe a couple years later. I think I would have considered maybe even in 2020 was when it happened. But it was all the way back in 2018 when this had really only been going on at that point. The revelations really starting for about 7, 8 months at that point. I mean, it was so fast and so overwhelming almost in the first year. It was crazy. And then we've just gotten deeper and deeper details because you see what had to happen, right? It's the foundation. So it was like the spirit, just every time I was reading, I was being inundated with an understanding of what these things were and where they were connected. It was so crazy. I was just talking to my mom a couple days ago actually, and she was panicking a little bit, right? But I was explaining some of these things to her about what it was like for me in the first year. And literally I would be in tears one, two, 3 times a week sometimes. Every week at some point because I was in absolute just I was a mess. My wife knows that every time she would come home, I was spewing these things to her. She'd come home from working all day and I'd spend the next 2 hours explaining everything that suddenly came into my understanding as I was reading. I mean, it was insanity. And one of these teachings that was in May of 2018 that we'll get into later, I mean, this isn't something that some people have kind of understood. I mean, no, there was no understanding of the difference of who the Gospels are speaking to. There was no understanding that the end was 14 years and a small portion above. And what it revealed within the Synoptic Gospels, that it's not Matthew, Mark, Luke, but Luke, Mark, Matthew. I mean, it's all of that alone was seemed like enough. People would write books on those things, and every time there was something new. I couldn't do that. There was continuous, continuous, continuous. And it was all because I believe it was the Father's will to tell the Spirit, whoever's job it was going to be, go do it. Now is the time. And for some reason, He's chosen me and us. Because if it was just me, then it would just mean nothing, would it? But when others are brought, they're led, they see it, they understand it, they receive it, they diligently search it out and see it and understand it for themselves, that's a group of people being prepared. And that's exactly what we're doing in this. This three-part series that I was talking about, the beginnings, now the midst, and then the next one, whether it's the next one or the one after, but most likely the next one, being the end of it, is just a preparation. It's to get us all on the same page. We know that in 8 years of the revelation becoming more and more and more clear and more detailed, that there's no way it's going to all get covered in a 3-hour teaching or a 2.5 or a 3.5 hour teaching. It's literally impossible. Every one of these things that we get into, we've got individual teachings on those topics along the way over the 8 years. So if we can go into each one into so much detail and how it connects in its own teaching, imagine how long a full meal deal teaching of the revelation of the end of days would be, with everything that we've been blessed with since the beginning of Genesis to the end of Revelation. It's it's awesome. And I know many of you guys understand that now. Many of you guys have been tracking for several years with us, even some who are newer and just get so blown away once the Spirit reveals it to them. It's, you get it. So you know what I'm talking about. And so this is to get us all on the same page, get us understanding the overarching, overall picture and events of things that are about to take place that we believe will begin later this month, towards the end of this month, beginning of February, and that was already covered in this beginnings. So what we're going to get into today is just a quick reminder as to where we ended, and then we're going to get going forward from there. Now, as I always do, and maybe I won't go quite so much this time, is if you're new to Ministry Revealed and you're just coming across these teachings now, I don't recommend you just start off by listening to this teaching and going in depth in it. I mean, you can, but you better really pray over it and seek it and search it out, because it's going to be so overwhelming to understand because you don't have the foundation. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, even the first year of all of the craziness and how it just kept coming hours at a time every day, that it was because a foundation needs to be laid. And as that foundation became understood, then the Lord continued to lead and open up more areas to connect on that foundation that was already laid. And now I believe that the foundation is laid, the building is done, and now we're trying to invite everybody in. Okay? That's kind of what's been going on now. It doesn't mean we know everything, but we've got the foundation. The building is built, and yeah, there's parts and pieces here and there that need a tidying up, or other doors that we haven't gone into. But overall, the building is built, and we want to invite people to come in and see and to understand, right? That's what we're doing. And so I always recommend everybody go to the playlist. You can go to the playlist right here on YouTube, or you can go to ministryrevealed.com. And when you do, on ministryrevealed.com, you go to menu and you go to the intro or intro series, something like that. Or you go to playlist right here and click on intro to the end times, and it'll bring this up. I always recommend these first 4 teachings for everybody. The 22-minute first one right here is just a light overview of what the next 3 are going to get into. The second one is the revealing of the mystery of the synoptic gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. That the differences within their gospels is all prophecy 100% every single time, in the differences of the stories. In the differences as to why something's in Mark but not in Matthew and Luke, or in Luke and Matthew but not in Mark, and in Matthew and Luke the story is different. It's all prophecy, and it's all about 3 different portions of time: Luke's, then Mark's, then Matthew's. And then what you're going to realize is that when you realize it's not all about Matthew, you're going to say, okay, well, if Matthew's was all about 7 years, then what's Mark's? Mark's is also 7 years. Luke's is the portion called above, that's 50 days. When you see that and it starts to blow your mind, you're going to come to this one, and this is just another intro. These are just light introductions to the revelation. We've got hours and hours and hours of teachings on these things. And this next one is a 30-minute intro to the revelation of the 14 years. 7 years of seals and 7 years of trumpets. Mark's discourse, 7 years of seals. Matthew's discourse, 7 years of trumpets. And then it's going to bring this big question: how come this wasn't understood before? Number 1 is it wasn't yet the time for the Lord God to make it known. Number 2, it's because generation after generation, we've all been taught from the Gospel of Matthew, which is why I named this one, It's All Because of Matthew. What's happened is because the foundation for everybody is in the Gospel of Matthew, we don't look to Mark and Luke as separate things to understand prophetically. We simply look at them as things to take little parts and pieces of to try to fill in the gaps of Matthew, when really they're all standing on their own. But we've all been taught from Matthew. And that's why people can go into the epistles and some of the things in Old Testament and see that pre-trib, mid-trib, and post-trib are true. And then people argue and debate over it because how does that play out in a 7-year period? Well, the answer is they're correct, but it doesn't play out over a 7-year period. It plays out over a portion called above and 14 years. Pre-trib, mid-trib, and post-trib are all true. All right? So come and watch these first 4 teachings right here. If you haven't yet or you're brand new, I promise you it'll be worth your time, as it has for thousands and tens of thousands of others, that you start to answer so many questions that people have had who have studied prophecies over the decades. All right? So with that, let's get this party started. All right. So where did we end in the last one? In the last one, we ended here in Mark's discourse. So again, Mark's discourse in verse 8 is the beginning of the 14 years of tribulation, which the Revelation shows will begin at a Nisan. Now, remember, there's an above portion of 50 days. That comes first, okay? That's our end of January that we're talking about. And there's a specific reason as to why this year, but have I been wrong in other years over the past years? Yes, of course I have. But we now know and understand, and the calendars have revealed themselves in ways and in understandings we've never had before. And same with the scriptures that have connected these things. So there's a reason why we're looking to the 50 days before Nisan this year. Okay? So we've covered this in the last one. And you have the 50 days, and then you have the beginning of the 14 years, which is the red horse rider time, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Okay? This right here is the first about 2 years or so of tribulation from the start of the 14 years. Okay? And it will take us all the way to the point of the abomination of desolation mentioned in Mark's discourse. Okay? Which means from Nisan, if this is the year, from Nisan of 2026 to Nisan of 2028 would be World War III, and it will begin with the destruction of Jerusalem. Okay? Jerusalem is the first place attacked at the beginning of the 14 years. They will flee. We're not talking about a light affliction. We're talking about destroyed. Okay? Not so much destroyed that you'll never be able to go in again because of radiation, but destroyed, and the Jews will have fled. Okay? That's how bad it's going to be. That's the beginning of the 14 years. And then it breaks out to World War III everywhere. It will last for about 2 years until this point right here. And this is where we ended. So we covered the 50 days and the first 2 years in the last teaching. And then where we are here in Mark chapter 13 and Mark's discourse in verse 14, we're now at the abomination of desolation. You see, when people study the abomination of desolation, they believe that the one in Matthew and the one in Mark is just a repeat, right? If you go to Luke's discourse, there is no abomination of desolation. And the wording is very different all throughout Luke's discourse. Why would Luke's be so much more different than Mark and even more different than Matthew's? There's a reason, all right? They're speaking to different portions at different times. And when you understand that, you will understand the wording, why Matthew's discourse doesn't end at the end of chapter 24, but also goes into chapter 25. It's so incredible once you understand it. And this abomination of desolation, when you realize that the end of days has 2 abominations of desolations because there are 2 temples in the end of days, that'll also start to make more sense for you. Why? Because how can there be 2 temples in the end of days? Because the church, you see, everybody going pre-trib is not all of the church. They are the ones who are in Christ, spirit-filled. And then the church is the 90% who remained, who weren't really ready, weren't really fully in Christ, spirit-filled. They're going to endure during seals. Some will fall away, more will come in. And that will be the great multitude, the mid-trib great multitude rapture that we'll talk to in a bit. Up to that point, we are still in the Gentile age. We are still in the church age until the end of seals. And what is the temple? The temple is within, right? We are the temple of God. So the mark of the beast is this abomination in Mark's discourse. It's the abomination spoken of by Daniel. If you go read Daniel, chapter 11 has an abomination mentioned and chapter 12 has another one. Funny how that works, right? And it says, stand where it ought not. This word standing in the Strong's Concordance also means placed, okay? To place where it ought not. Well, what is something in the midst of seals that will be placed where it should not? That would be the mark of the beast. Okay? We shared in the last one how you'll notice in Mark's discourse, there's no mention of false Christs or false prophets from the red horse rider until the abomination of desolation. Okay? At which point, we saw that now in verse 22, we have false Christs and false prophets being mentioned. Why? Because we are now at the point of Revelation chapter 13. Again, where we ended it, right? We ended it at this point of the abomination of desolation in Mark's discourse. The thing being placed where it ought not is all about when the beast now gets his power and authority for 42 months. The power and authority of the 42 months of the beast comes after, okay? It comes after World War III. This is why it says in verse 4, it says, and they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? Why? Because the power and the authority that he's going to be given, he's being given Satan's seat. This power and authority that he has, he's going to be able to stop this World War III. Doesn't mean there's still not wars going on, but the overarching World War III will end. You see, and people will have been crying out for a savior, for somebody to save them from the horrors that they've been witnessing for the last 2 years in World War III. It's going to be chaos. And this is the point at which he gets his power for 42 months. What do we know comes at this point? Well, you've also got the other beast coming out of the earth, which is the false prophet, right? Who's going to do signs and wonders to get everybody to worship the beast, the first beast out of the sea in Revelation 13. And they'll have to what? They'll be caused both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their hand or in their forehead. Now, if you remember, the word in here, just so you guys are aware, especially for new people, just so you're aware, the word in this case, should not actually be the word in, okay? It should be, where is it? It should be the word on, oh, right here. In Revelation 13:6, okay, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead. It's actually the Greek word 1909 in both cases, which means on, okay? This is important to understand. It means on. It's like a mystery we showed within Luke and Mark when Jesus is coming in a cloud, when he's coming as the white horse rider, okay? But in Mark's discourse, it says he's coming in the clouds, plural. Both of those ins mean in. But when you go to Matthew 24 and it says in the clouds, it sounds exactly like Mark's, but when you go to the Strong's Concordance, you're going to find that it's the word, the Greek word here, the same one, Greek word 1909, even though it says in, because that represents the Lord coming on the clouds for the whole world to see as lightning from one end unto the other. And so many people, if they don't use the Strong's Concordance to find out word definitions, they go to Matthew chapter 24 like everybody does, like a broken record, because they only believe in 7 years. And when they do that, when they only go to Matthew because they don't know the differences of Mark and Luke, and you read using the King James, which is the best one, but if you don't use the Strong's, it could trip you up because there's so many other definitions in it. And what happens is you see in the clouds, and people think that's the pre-trib coming of the Lord, even though it says immediately after the tribulation of those days. You see? But if you had the Strong's Concordance, you would realize that that's him coming on the clouds. Okay? That's his return, feet down on the Mount of Olives, when he comes on the clouds as lightning from one end to the other. So it's important to understand these definitions, and to have a program like this, like eSword, This is what I use here, E-sword. And no, I'm not sponsoring it or paid for it, never have. I've donated to them in the past because I'm so appreciative for it. But you see, you have the Strong's Concordance at your fingertips by downloading the KJV Plus version. Okay? So it's important to see that the mark of the beast is on the right hand or on the forehead. Now, what were we talking about in this? What's important to understand is at this point, we're talking about Mark's discourse and the abomination standing where it ought not, meaning to place the abomination where it ought not. And we're still in the Gentile age until the end of seals, which means what? Which means the temple is still within the believers during seals. And the mark of the beast is this placing where it ought not. That's what's going on. Okay? What else? Where else is this period of time? Well, we know it from Daniel chapter 7, right? The beast is right here. How does it start? World War III starts with the attack by the beast who is a lion. Okay? I believe, and we talked about in the last one, that that's Syria. And then you've got the bear, which is Russia. And then you've got the leopard, which would be European, probably German. And all of this represents World War III, that first about 2 years. Until, like we said in the last one, and what we're talking about now, until the fourth beast comes, and he is the one with the 10 horns. Okay? He's the one with the 10 horns. We know this is the beast of Revelation chapter 13. It even helps you out by telling you the one with 10 horns. So in Revelation chapter 17, where are we? Okay, World War III is now come to an end. We covered that in the last one and where it was represented. Now we're at the was of Revelation chapter 17, verse 8. This is where we ended at the last time, because what does the was represent? It represents the 42 months of the beast. Okay, so what we're going to cover today is the was, which represents the 42 months when the beast gets his power. And we're going to go till the end of the is not. At the end of the is not is right at the point when the pit is opened and the beast returns again, which means something's going to happen to the beast for him not to be here anymore and for him to be able to come back again. And we're not going to go into all of this one today, but we're going to take it right up to right here. Okay? That's what we're covering today. And this piece that we're covering right here is a period of about 8 years. Okay? So let's have a look. Where are we right now? Sorry, not where are we right now. Where are we right now in the sense of what I'm pointing to? Okay? We're right here. So we would be in the spring of 2028, at about Nisan of 2028. So remember, the 50 days comes first before Nisan. We are already now, if we've understood this year and the counts of Israel, of Jerusalem, all the way back from Christ to the end of days, if we've got it understood, which this calendar is revealed, then hold on tight or get ready to let go, actually. Okay? We are in the final, on the sowing and reaping side, we are in the final 2 sets of 7 before the final Jubilee, and this count comes all the way from Christ, including a perfect count from Israel when they got the land of Israel in 1948. But the 14 years that we talk about counts from a Nisan side, which would start at Nisan of this year, if we've understood, and will end at Nisan at the end of 14 years. Now, we're not getting into all of the reasoning and everything else. We've broken it all down. We know why it goes to here. Even though all the events are ending at this point right here, there's a reason why this 14 goes all the way to here, because the Lord replenishes the earth, and then those who were gone into the wilderness to a place protected, this is when they will return, and all of their portions of land and everything are given to them in their Jubilee. Okay? So, from the last one, we covered the 50 days and the 2 years approximately of World War III. Until what? Until the beast shows up right in this period of time right here. Okay? This is when the beast would get his power to continue 42 months. Okay? Why does it say to continue? Well, because he will have already been here. He's just now being given the power and the authority as the beast to quash the World War III and to have people now come to him. You see how it's playing out? World War III is to it's like a double-edged sword almost. It's the Lord in his mercy bringing it about, allowing it to be so that people will have no choice but to cry out to the Lord in repentance and to save them, to help them. But for the enemy, when the enemy then shows up and he gets the power for 42 months, what will happen to those who never cried out to Christ, who were just crying, screaming against him or cursing him or still didn't want to hear anything about him? Well, they're still going to be dire straits as well. And they're going to be crying out for anybody to come and help them. And so when the beast shows up, who do you think they're going to start saying, yeah, that's the man, right? Most people will go to the beast because they just had to endure World War III. You see? So this is what we're talking about. We're now at this point right at the beginning of the was, and this is the 42 months that will take us to the end of the 6th year of seals. Okay? Remember where we are. Let's look at where we are again. We're right here. Okay? We're right here. But now the beast has power for how long? 42 months. So if we go spring, that's 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and spring to fall would be right here. That would be the end of 42 months. What would be the end of 42 months? Right here, which would be what? Which would be after 6 days. You see that? 6 days as 6 years, which we'll cover in a little bit. And what happens at this point? You see? That would be Mark's discourse at the coming of the Lord. He's coming on the day and hour no one knows, which would be the Feast of Trumpets. See how incredible that works? That's the mystery and the revelations of prophecy. But there's something even more important before we get there. That's important about this timing right here, because this after 2 years, which is after like really 2 years and 50 days, right? But after 2 years from the start of the 14 years is Nisan of 2028. Okay? So it brings us to Nisan of 2028. And where are we now at this time in the book of Revelation? In the book of Revelation, it brings us to the point of the 4th seal. Okay? The 2nd seal was the beginning. The red horse rider, as we just covered in the last one, as we just touched on, is the beginning of the 14 years. Okay, the beginning of World War III, which starts with the lion, the beast who is a lion that attacks Jerusalem. That's the beginning of World War III. The 3rd seal is just from all of the chaos of World War III that then brings about famine and everything else. Okay, but when the beast gets his power, and this is something we've been teaching on, I used to teach on this years ago, that the 4th seal is the time frame of the beast. Okay? The 4th seal is the time frame of him getting that power now for 42 months. Okay? And we see it here, a pale horse, and the name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed him. Okay? This is now death and hell. This is where it's getting really, it gets bad at this point. Okay? And we're going to talk about this in a second too, because even though the first half or the first couple years of the 14, the first couple years of seals was really bad because it was World War III, at that point, guess what? It was simply World War III. You see how crazy that is? We've mentioned this in the past in other teachings. The entire portion of World War III, nation against nation, famines and troubles, right? Roiling of water and earthquakes breaking out everywhere. All of these, as World War III, are simply called the beginning of sorrows. It's just the beginning of tribulation. It's devastating when you think of it like that. When you understand that, it's so harsh. So look at what happens at this time when the beast gets his power. It says, and power is given unto them over the 4th part of the earth to kill with the sword. Okay? Now, what do you think this killing with the sword is? World War III is over. Remember, to him was given a great sword, right? This great sword to kill one another was the beginning of World War III. This is a different sword. Okay? To kill with sword. This is probably the killing of Christians. Okay? Those, and for everybody who's refusing the mark of the beast. They won't also be able to what? They'll be put to death. They'll be hungered. because they won't be able to buy or sell, okay? And with death and with the beasts of the earth. And how can we explain that this is really the beheadings and stuff that would be taking place? All we now do is just go to the fifth seal. What happens when the beast gets his power and his authority? What happens when the false prophet is saying he's the man, he's the one that everybody needs to worship, and he's doing all these signs and wonders to get people to believe, and now there's the mark that's taken place in the worshiping of the beast. What ends up happening? They're killed if they don't worship him, and they can't buy or sell, right? So they'll still be going hungry. So they'll be killed with death and with the beasts of the earth and so forth. And watch what happens now when you get to the fifth seal. And when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. Hello. When were these guys slain that they're now, that the souls of them are now under the altar in heaven? When did they all get killed? They started getting killed right here. At the fourth seal, at the time of the beast when he got his power. And it was now time to start worshiping him or pay the price. This portion of time, this pale horse, the fourth going to the fifth seal, the fourth seal and the fifth seal, this is what we're talking about right here again in Mark chapter 13. The abomination of desolation has taken place, placed where it ought not, meaning on the people, on the temple of God, except for those, if you don't believe in God, then the temple isn't within you, right? But it's that potential for them. And now look what it says about this period of time. Remember what we're saying. World War III is only going to be the beginning. But it says at this point that this time is going to be worse than at any time in human history to this point. Okay? It says in verse 17, but woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, and pray ye that your flight be not in the winter. For in those days shall be affliction, such as was not from the beginning of the creation which God created unto this time, neither shall be. Whoa. Yikes. We can't really comprehend what that means. How is the beast going to have so much power and so much authority over the entirety of the planet that it's going to be a time worse than it was in all of human history? With this many people and so much going on, yeah, we see and understand all of the military might and the drones and all those things and everything that can happen. But, I mean, how could it get that bad? How is it even possible to cover so much of the earth that it would be worse than it was at any point since the beginning of creation? Do you understand now why Mark said that the World War III is just the beginning of sorrows? If by the midst of seals, that midish time of seals when the beast gets his power, is now going to be worse than at any point since all of creation? I can't wrap my head around that. That it's too much. It's too much to grasp what it really means. Okay? And what does it say? And except that the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh would be saved, but for the elect's sake, whom he hath chosen, he has shortened the days. You want to know what that mystery is? The calendars have revealed it. Okay? The 14 years begins at Nisan, but there is also a 14 years that began this past fall. Okay? Again, remember, if we've understood the seasons and times, okay, as revealed in Scripture and through the calendar revelation, the 14 years literally begins at Nisan, but there was a 14 years that began at the fall of 2025, which was the beginning of the final two sets of 7 in a 7 times 7 to 49, and then the Jubilee. This wasn't an invented count. This is a count that went all the way back to the time of Christ and when he declared the Jubilee in Luke chapter 4. It lined up to when Israel came into the land in 1948, which had to be a Sabbath year because they hadn't been there before, and so that fall they started sowing and reaping in a year 1, and it equaled a year 1. Okay? So, what is this shortening of the times? Well, the 14 years begins right here. You see how on this side it's after 2 years World War III comes to an end? But on this side, it would seem like 2.5 years, right? Well, the beast, we know he gets his 42 months regardless. Okay? So 42 months would be 1, 2, 3.5 years. So on this side, over here, we're still halfway through the 6th year of the 14 years. You see, we're not at the end of the 6th over here yet. We're only 5.5 years in. Okay, we're in the 6th year or 5.5 years in when on this side, the beast's 42 months is over. And this is the coming of the Son of Man in the incredible revelation that I was talking about at the beginning that we'll share in a little bit when we get here, which is the after 6 days or 6 years on this side. So when it talks about being shortened, this is the shortening. It's not going to the end of the 6th over here. It's going to the end of the 6th over here. It's not. It has nothing to do with the scriptures everywhere tell us 42 months, and then the Lord's going to shorten those 42 months. Well, no. He told us it would be 42 months. It's there as 42 months, and it's throughout Scripture in what? 3 different places. Okay, or two different places in Revelation. We know it's going to be 42 months. It's that it was shortened, that the entirety of this period of time to the end of the 6th year of seals being represented by this side. Okay, you see, when it starts, look at where the white horse rider is. The white horse rider is about right here, okay, in the winter of this side right here. And you got the pre-trib and the white horse rider being in the winter portions of what? Of year 1 on this side. You see, the 50 days are coming before the 14 years on this side. But on this side, it's already started. It's just the literal events don't happen till 50 days before the 14 years. So that's why when you see here, it looks like it's 2 years, but on this side, it's really 2.5 years into the storyline. It's wild. So what you see is the after 42 months ends right here, and this is literally the day and hour in Mark's discourse of the coming of the Lord. Okay? So when we see this and we know it's going to be a crazier time than it was in all of human history, why is that the case? Well, because look who shows up. False Christs and false prophets. Okay? False Christs and false prophets show up at the time of the abomination of desolation because it is the beginning of the 42 months of the beast. Now, what is in history, in the Old Testament, what is one of the prophetic pictures of this time? It's Exodus chapter 12. Okay? In Exodus chapter 12, and this actually gets very interesting because the story of Moses and the story of Elijah, you'll notice that in the prophetic context of looking back in history, they don't seem to really come to the stage until this point here. It's interesting, right? We often talk about the Moses and the Elijah company. We'll talk about them a little bit here tonight as well. This Moses and Elijah company. The Moses company is the one helping the people that will take them into the places of protection around the world when it's this time to flee from the mark of the beast. But then there's an Elijah company. And the Elijah company are more of the prophets that are going out, that are teaching the people, that are bringing people to salvation and standing on whatever it is, on hillsides or going before governments or into churches and proclaiming the truth, the prophecies, revealing the understanding. And those who are coming to Christ will be led and will be taken to places in the wilderness where these places are protected. But what you notice is the story of Moses. Yes, there's things before it, but he's gone for like 40 years, right? And then he comes back and you've got the plagues and let my people go. Well, it's the same with Elijah. Elijah doesn't really start to show up prophetically until this point either, right? So it's very interesting to see how this plays out, but it doesn't mean that they're not here. You know what I mean? The end of days is not a carbon copy of what was in the Old Testament. Okay? It rhymes, but it's not a copy. Okay? It's what was shall be, what is shall be, but in a rhyme, not in verbatim. So we know that they're going to be here. And maybe this is like we see in the seven churches chart that we've covered, which is this one right here. You see, when the persecution is starting with Smyrna, that's because that's the Elijah, probably even the Moses company, that are going around and telling people what's going on. Okay? We know they're going out. They're being sent out right away from Jerusalem at the start of the 14 years. See, it's a period of wanderings before the Pergamum time, when it's time to flee into the wilderness. So these are the events taking place here during the time of the first half or the first 2 years. Okay, it's the wandering. So we know the Elijah company are here. We know that the Moses company are here during the World War III stuff, but it's their real time to step forward on the stage in a real sense, and their purpose is now kicking in at this point. And we've shown this, and we're going to show it now because it's also the connection to Moses. Okay? We know that the Moses and the Elijah companies of the end of days are a John the Baptist type of the first time. You see, John the Baptist, it was told that he was the Elijah, right? But Elijah went up in a whirlwind, and John the Baptist was beheaded. That's kind of different. It's very different, isn't it? But then we've got Moses. And in the picture of Moses, Moses didn't get to go into the promised land, and he died not being able to go into the promised land. You see, he's actually also a typology picture of John the Baptist, being at the end of seals and helped the people to that point, and then couldn't take them over, or Christ comes and now takes over. You see, it's the same kind of storyline in John and Moses, and in the prophetic of Moses to when the Lord comes. And we've also got the Elijah. Okay, so they're doing their things in the end of days, leading a people and gathering them and teaching them and doing what they do, showing them the ways while they're in places of protection. And we got those who are going out and around the world and that are leading people and confronting the enemies and bringing people to and leading people to the places where the Moses company are gathering the people and protecting them during these 42 months. Okay? So what's the prophetic picture we get with Moses? When does this happen that they're to flee into the wilderness? We see it right here in Exodus chapter 12. Okay? When did they have to flee into the wilderness? Okay? They had to flee from what? And I will not suffer the destroyer to come unto your house and smite you. And when do we know the destroyer of the Gentiles is also coming, right? So we know that this time frame, we see it all over the place. And look at, when are they fleeing? Pharaoh rises up at night, right? All the firstborns are killed in Exodus chapter 12. And in verse 31, and he called for Moses and Aaron by night. And what happened? Moses and Aaron left. We all know, and with all of the people of Israel, right? They all left. When did they leave? They left at Nisan. They left at Passover. So what are we talking about in our time frame? Ta-da! Nisan. It just so happens that the timing of the beast showing up is also at Nisan, when his 42 months begins, and it's the time that they what? Flee into the wilderness. It's literally Mark's discourse at the time of fleeing, but in this case, it will be fleeing from the beast, from the mark of the beast. They fled what? They fled on the 15th day. So if we take it into the calendars and we go into 2028 at Nisan, this would be the approximate fleeing time into the wilderness. Okay, if the calendars are to be understood, and we're to take the again, we've looked into all of the calendars over the years and years and years, and bounced back and forth on so many things. And there's something that some people just haven't quite understood yet. There's a sowing and reaping year, and there's a Nisan year. If the revelation of the calendars have been revealed using a fall sowing and reaping and using a Nisan year count, then why wouldn't we be using the Hebrew calendar? Ah, interesting, right? So I have stuck to my guns because of the revelation that it is going to be based off of the Hebrew calendar. Okay? Could there be something where it's off by a day or two because of where the moon actually comes on the compared to the preset calendar? Sure, there could be a day here or there. But essentially, this is the 15th of Nisan. Whether it's maybe over here at the moon or whether it's more over here, essentially it wouldn't be by more than a day or so on either side. Okay? So in 2028, 2 years from Nisan of this year, would be the time of the fleeing into the wilderness, because the beast has now come on the scene and he's got his power and his authority for 42 months. Look at what happens at that point. In Revelation 13, verse 7, and it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given him over all the kindred and tongues and nations. All of it's being given to him. Who gives them his power and his authority? The dragon. Somehow, the dragon gives him his power. Okay? He gives him his power, his seat, and his authority. That's crazy. Now you understand why Marx is saying it's going to be worse than ever up to that point in all of human history, since the creation. Even before human history, do you get that? It says since creation. It's crazy. It's wild to think about. Look at what he's doing. He's making war with the saints to overcome them. It's going to be a time, like, even though we've read about it, we've understood it, we've seen shows on it and so forth, no human mind is going to be ready for this except the Spirit is in them and strengthening them, just like it tells us. All right? It reminded me here of 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Because remember what we were talking about here in Exodus. And all of these things that happened when Moses, at this timing, which would be the equivalent timing of here, after 2 years of World War III, and the beast getting his power, that these guys are now fleeing into the wilderness. We know that they are an example. Well, that's exactly what we're told in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Okay? In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, go to verse 4, and we see, and did all drink the same spiritual drink, for they drank of the spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. Okay? And then it says, but with many of them God was not well pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness. Now, listen to this. Oh, man, listen carefully to this. Verse 6. Now these things were our examples. Isn't that crazy? Do you know what it's telling you? That those things that they did back in Moses' day when they fled into the wilderness, like this group in the end of days is going to be fleeing into the wilderness at this point, the things that they did that angered God and that caused some to fall away, being in the midst of that wilderness, God used as examples for those in the end of days. Isn't that crazy? Some were sacrificed as examples for us at the end of days. Do you think this is maybe important to understand? Do you know why? Because the comparative number, even if it was a couple million back in Moses' day, do you know what it's going to be in the end of days? Do you know that there's going to be, by the time of the mid-trib great multitude rapture, the coming of the Lord at the end of 6 years of seals, and the time of the mid-trib great multitude, of those who have died and of those who will have made it alive at the time of the mid-trib great multitude, combined dead and alive, those who will have come to him in the midst of seals will be approximately, I believe, 1.2 something billion people. Did you hear that? 1.2 something billion people. Now, you see the difference as to how they could have been examples for us to understand that don't do the stupid things that they did in the wilderness. Trust and follow the Lord. Be repentant and remember that you're being saved from the enemy. 1.2 something billion people in places fleeing in the wilderness. Some of them maybe not fleeing, but hiding out in houses or wherever, right? How many are going to get killed? I don't know. Maybe a few 100 million, but not more than half. I would say less than half for sure. Definitely less than half, but maybe a couple hundred, 300 million, 400 million. We don't know. But that's the approximate number of those who will come to be saved. It sounds like a lot, and it is, but it's also pretty sad, isn't it? Out of the 8 billion people, 144 million pre-trib, 1.2 something, maybe about 1.5-ish, 1.4, 1.5 billion out of 8 billion total. That's a narrow path, right? Even to the mid-trib. They were examples of what not to do when your wilderness time comes. To the intent, we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted. Neither be idolaters as some of them, as it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. Neither let us commit fornication as some of them committed and fell in one day 23,000. Neither let us tempt Christ as some of them also tempted and were destroyed of serpents. Neither murmur ye, as some of them also murmured and were destroyed of the destroyer. See how that works? Fleeing into the wilderness, the destroyer coming and attacking and destroying them. The serpents? What serpents? Oh, you mean the beast of Revelation 13, right? Or the serpent, the Satan, the great red dragon of Revelation 12:3 also. And it said, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. Who is this? This is the next wonder. This, at about the time when the beast gets his power, when the 42 months starts, this is going to be the other sign seen in the heavens. This is going to be the Satan, the dragon, in the second heaven still. When does this come? Pre-trib happens around here. The travailing is the 40 days of the Son of Man. And the pain to be delivered is what we talked about in Mark, is the first 2 years of World War III. The beginnings of sorrows. And then what happens? It's the time when the beast gets his power and his authority. Satan's going to give him that power, his seat, and his authority now. Well, what else comes next? And the destroyer. And listen to what it says. Now all these things happened unto them for examples. It's been a long time since I read 1 Corinthians 10 and taught on it, like a few years. And when I was doing a search on it, I came across it. I was like, oh my goodness, I knew I wanted to go to this before and I couldn't find it. Here it is again. Look at how clear this is. Now all these things happen unto them for examples. And they are written for our admonition, upon whom the end of the world are come. Hello. Who's this for? The people of the end of days. Who are they looking to? They should be looking to the examples of what happened to those who went in the Exodus when Moses led them in the Exodus. What are we teaching on? This exact same typology of time is revealing the timing of Moses in the prophetic typology of Moses and them fleeing into the wilderness, as it is at the 2-year point of the 14 years into tribulation when the beast shows up on the scene. It goes even deeper too. Let's see. I'm not going to go into all of it. I was considering going into the entire chapter and just going all the way through. But go and read it for yourselves in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Okay, as examples, and the destroyer coming, examples of the things to come. It goes on, and it explains so many of the things that we've understood are coming as a prophetic typology, as a prophetic picture that we've been teaching about Moses, and those who he led out into the wilderness. We've been teaching about this and about that similarity to the prophecy, to the prophetic of the is to come, being the same typology And here it's telling us exactly what we've been saying. Yep, they're examples for you. They're examples for you to look to for what not to do, and in other things for what to do. Okay? Then we go to Revelation 2. So when we go to Revelation 2, we know this now with the churches, don't we? What happens when we get into Pergamos? Well, we know that the church of Ephesus is the very beginning of the 50 days, right after the pre-trib, and it connects to the apostles, the new apostles who will be anointed right away. And then we have Smyrna. Smyrna is the group that we always talk about, the remnant group of the Elijah company, which is who we mostly focus on, but also the Moses company. And this is when the Lord returns and the 40 days begin. This is when he comes as the white horse rider. And both of those groups are working at least through all of seals, and some will go even to the end of trumpets. But Pergamos is now where? Pergamos is also the exact same place that we're talking about now. It's that beginning of the 42 months when the beast gets his power. And what do we find out? The same wording. In Revelation chapter 2, verse 13, I know thy works and where thy dwellest, even where Satan's seat is. So even where Satan's seat is. If we go to Revelation 13, what do we find out? That the beast, what happens to him, right? To worship the dragon who gave power unto the beast. Where's his seat? Was it a little bit further? Oh, there it is. In verse 2, in Revelation 13, verse 2, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. You see, that's what we're seeing. Here we are reading in Pergamos. It's the exact same timing of the beast getting his power to continue. That 42 months. Why? Because that sign, whatever is happening with Satan in in the heavens of that sign, he's now with his seat, and the beast is getting his power and his seat and his authority from Satan. And we're seeing it right here in Pergamos. That's why the placement of this is where it is, just like we've revealed in the 7 churches and how they play out in the end of days. We see the conversation then of what? Then of martyrs. And it says, even in those days wherein Antipas was my faithful martyr, who was slain among you where Satan dwells. What do we now see happening? Martyrs. Of course we're seeing martyrs now. That's exactly what we read in Revelation chapter 13. What happens when the beast gets his 42 months? It went on to say in verse 7 of Revelation 13, and it was given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. But what happens to them? It says, he that leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Do you guys know what that means? I think you do, right? That means you can't turn around and point your finger and say, no. Hey, if you're going to take me, take him too. He's doing this or doing that. You see? Or just to save yourself, be pointing it out and pointing somebody else out. You do that, you'll end up in captivity too. Okay? What's the other thing? If you see, this is a big patience for some, right? Whoever kills by the sword. So somebody's coming after you, and you've come to Christ. You're a saint, and you're enduring this time, and you decide you're going to kill somebody. Uh-oh. Now you need to be killed. That's what it's saying. That's why it's the patience and the faith of the saints at this point. You see? You can't do those things that the world is going to be doing, because there will be many temptations to do these things, to save your own skin. And I'm not saying so much for the workers. This is what's going to be happening in the midst of tribulation. Okay? This is what's going to be happening when the people next door and the new believers and so forth are trying to save their hides along the way. These are the things for us to understand, to be able to teach others. So, and again, as we read this in Pergamos, of course, who do we see? We've covered this in the past. We've got teachings on all of this as well in great detail. That it's now the time of Balaam and Balak. Balaam and Balak are the false prophet and the Antichrist, or the beast. Right? The false prophet and the false king. Right at the time When Satan is giving his power and his seat and authority, you've got the beast and the false prophet and the beast mentioned. We know where they connect to. We saw where it was. We've gone to Numbers chapter 24 numerous times, you see. And what do? They cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel to eat things sacrificed unto idols and to commit fornication. You see, they're throwing stumbling blocks before people, before believers, to get them to get tripped up and fall from Christ or to avoid coming to Christ. There's even things about, when I said if you want to go back and read, and you read all of 1 Corinthians 10, you'll read the things about eating, okay? That it's okay to eat bread from eat meat or whatever it is from wherever it comes from, regardless of the animal, as long as you do it in thanksgiving. So remember, even this context of the end of days. You can't just kill some wild animal and just go about and devour and eat it. If you give thanks to the Lord and you're in praise, and then you have this animal, you can. But it also talks about it just in the sense of if you go to somebody's house, which we know in the end of days they will go, and the people will give them food and drink in their stay, right? Because you're worthy of your work. And it says that unless they tell you these things are sacrificed unto idols, then you're not to ask. You're to just simply eat it and drink it. But if they tell you, then for conscience sake, you don't eat it. Why? Because then those around you are seeing that you as the Christian is now eating something, as the believer is eating something sacrificed to idols, and it's been made known to you. But is it because it defiles you? Nope. It's not because it defiles you, brothers and sisters. Scripture tells us we are set free. And if you go read about this entire story in here, once you're set free in it, doesn't matter what you eat. Doesn't matter what you drink. But if you're told it's sacrificed, doesn't mean you can't eat it, but you're not to eat it because the conscience that it will do to the people around you or the person serving you who maybe did it as a trick against you. Okay, to see if you would eat it having been told that it was sacrificed. You see? It's for the other people, it's not for you, because it wouldn't affect you either way. It's pretty wild. The depth of these things and where it goes and where it leads is truly incredible. And so, again, where are we now? Revelation 2, verse 17. And he that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna. Why would we have hidden manna being talked about here at the same time that there's martyrs, at the same time that the beast and false prophet are showing up from Revelation 13? Why would there suddenly be manna? I guess it's pretty obvious, isn't it? Because it's going to follow the same storyline as the Exodus. It's the same storyline as the Exodus. They were crying, and you took us out from Egypt, and you did all these things, and now we're starving. We're dying. We got no water. And what is it? Then, of course, the Lord gives them the quail that came up, and then he fed them manna from heaven. It's the exact same timing as the manna that's going to be coming. Why? Because this is the time when the beast gets his power and authority, and it's the time when Christians will be fleeing into the places of protection in the wilderness. It'll be the time when the remnant of the Elijah company will be going out and prophesying and doing their work, and probably against the false Christs and false prophets, right? And even contending with some of them. And these people, the others, they will be protected. The Lord will provide the manna and the water and so forth in the wilderness while the Moses company is leading them. It's all in order. Everywhere from the beginning of Genesis to the end of Revelation, as we've gone through these stories, it is all in order every single time. Right? Over and over and over again. It's this time where it's going to be worse than ever. Worse than ever. Okay? Until what? Until what? So we know now what's going on in this time, right? Once the fleeing into the wilderness happens, and you've got that 42 months of fleeing, what's going to be happening in the wilderness? Moving around, probably from place to place. I used to talk about this video every once in a while, a movie with Daniel Craig called uh what is it now? Daniel Craig, Deliverance, Defiance. Deliverance is something crazy. Defiance. Okay, with Daniel Craig, and it's a great movie. It's based on a true story from World War II. And what you see in that is kind of, I assume, something along those lines, but not just locally in World War II. This time it will be World War III all over the world with pockets and places like what they have there. There might be some so remote that there's homes and places, but in the movie, and what will be like that in the end of days, is places even in the wilderness where people are just hiding out, and they're going to have to build things with the trees that are around and so forth, right? It's that type of thing. And so when you watch that, you have to remember that the end of days says it's going to be worse than any time that came before. So even worse than that. Why? Because it's also, what makes it worse is that this time it's also going to be global. Okay? A global manhunt for Christians all over the world. That's craziness. That's craziness. Okay? We showed that in even the in Revelation 13, that when it comes to the mark of the beast, that we see that it's all this, the buying and selling. We find out that the word, the buy and sell, is found in Mark's gospel too. You don't find it in Luke's. You see why? Because of the reason, the way these things, the scriptures are laid out, is revealing the truth and the understanding of these things. So the beast, now we know, has power until the end of the 6th year of seals. Okay? We know that he's what? He's going to stamp the residue with his feet. This is what he's doing. He's going to be breaking, crushing people down. We know this is the beast. He's stamping the residue with his feet. Okay? And we know that he's doing it for 42 months. In fact, let's prove it out. Revelation chapter 11, starting in verse 2. But the court which is without the temple, leave out. Which temple? It's still the time of the fleshly temple, the human body. Okay? He's saying in the spirit realm, the court that is without, the flesh, leave it out and measure it not. For it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months. Let's go to this wording in Revelation chapter 11, and let's see what the meaning of this word, this treading underfoot. Okay? In verse 2, and shall tread underfoot 42 months. Look at that. To trample down. To trample, to tread underfoot. What did it just tell us in Daniel 7? That the beast is going to what? To stamp them under, to stamp the residue with feet. Let's go see what it says in Daniel in the definition that the beast is going to do for the 42 months of the trampling, of the treading underfoot. Okay? To stamp the residue underfoot. To stamp, to, there it is, to trample. See? This is the going after. This is the killing of the Christians. This is when he's got his power for 42 months, and he's now going to tread them underfoot. This is that period of time. Okay? This again is that 42 months and him going to make war with the saints and to overcome them. All because they're fleeing the mark of the beast and the worshiping of him and so forth. But the Lord will have places of protection where manna will be given. But here's another thing to remember, and that is necessary to remember to teach people in this time. In obedience. Hello. Obedience. You see, if they defile and they're disobedient in these places of protection, and they've been warned once, they've been warned twice, the third time, you admonish them. They're gone. You see, it's not going to be some cakewalk, right? It's not just the Lord saying, oh, anybody, you just call on my name, and, whether you really believe it or not, or you're just saying it to have a place of refuge in the wilderness in the midst of this chaos. Oh, sure, no problem. But I'm going to do whatever I want when I'm there. It won't matter what these guys are doing. Nope, that's not the way it's going to work. That ain't going to be the way it's going to work. Okay? There's obedience that must be followed. They will all be saints there, and those who aren't will be made known. It's a wild time. So again, this has now taken us to that 42 months, and within this 42 months, who else do we know is there? There's Mystery Babylon the Great, right? This woman, and what does she do? The filthiness of what? Her fornication. Okay, she's full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. Well, as we continue in the seven churches, what did we see when Balaam and Balak, when the beast and the false prophet show up? They're going to commit things to eating things sacrificed to idols and to commit fornication. Now we know they're hiding out in the wilderness. But who else is there? We know that there's Mystery Babylon. And where's Mystery Babylon? Who is Mystery Babylon connected to? It's the time of Thyatira. Okay? This time of Thyatira, if we go to the seven churches again, and we go to this time of Thyatira, you'll notice that it says the connection is Numbers, okay? But it's also First Kings. And we have First Kings and Second Kings down here, but First Kings should also be included after Numbers right here in this section right here. And the reason I say that is because of who Thyatira represents, okay? Thyatira is a representation towards that second half of seals when who shows up? When Mystery Babylon, when she's there. And we see her in Thyatira. Remember, Thyatira is still this part of the second half of seals, when the beast has his 42 months. And it says in verse 20, notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee, because thou sufferest that woman Jezebel, which calls herself a prophetess, to teach and to seduce my servants to commit fornication and to eat things sacrificed unto idols. Now, why would they eat these things sacrificed unto idols? Do you think they do it on purpose? Right? If they said it was sacrificed, you see how it all connects? If they were told ahead of time that it was sacrificed unto idols, they wouldn't have eaten it, because those around them would have said, hey, you shouldn't be eating it. You know not to eat those things sacrificed to idols. When really they can eat it. It's just what it would do to the image of those listening to them. You see? So what happens? They were probably told after the fact. Okay? Or not being told that they're eating these things sacrificed unto idols. She's a huge deception. Okay? And she has them commit fornication. I don't think they'll be committing fornication, but seducing them to, right? And it says, and I gave her space to repent of her fornication, and she repented not. Behold, I will cast her into a bed, and them that commit adultery with her into great tribulation. What's happening? Who is this representing? This is, of course, the woman riding the beast. The woman riding the beast. This is exactly what it is. And we see the connection to it, of course, in 1 Kings chapter 16. When Ahab marries Jezebel, and Jezebel what? Goes and serves and worships Baal. Hello. And then who do we have that shows up on the scene? Elijah. Elijah showing up on the scene. Now, again, this is what I was saying earlier. It doesn't mean that Elijah's not already on the scene. Doesn't mean that he's not there before the timing of Thyatira. Of course he is. Okay? But here we see this remnant group, the Moses and the Elijah companies, tied in to this period of time of the second half of seals when the beast has his 42 months. You see that the fleeing is the Moses connection. And that the time of standing up against them, and the ones who will stand up against the false prophets and the beasts and so forth, are the ones who are the Elijah companies, and will be the ones going out across the earth, putting themselves out there to the population to come to Christ. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. So now where does this bring us? Okay? Thyatira is the final church. Okay? That final warning, and those who have committed adultery with her will go into great tribulation, which means, as bad as this was in the second half of seals, it's not even great tribulation yet. Hello. Hello. Why? Because great tribulation, the worst of all tribulation, will begin at the time and times and half a time where we're going to end it later tonight, okay? A little later on. So where are we here right now? We're coming until the end of the 6th year of seals, okay? Or to the end of the 6th year when the Lord is coming what? Okay? When it says unto the end, and he that keepeth his works unto the end, doesn't mean the end of everything, means unto their end. This time, to him will I give power over the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. As the vessels of a potter shall they be broken to shivers, even as I received of my Father, and I will give him the morning star. This is, of course, the Lord coming as the morning star and as the rod of iron to rule. Okay? As a potter to what? To break them into shivers, because he's going to destroy the enemies when he comes at the end of the 6th year of seals. This is what happens at the end of Thyatira. Well, we all know this portion of time, don't we? It's this timing here where the Lord has come after 6 days in Mark's triumphal entry, or sorry, in Mark's transfiguration, which is a picture of after 6 days. In prophecy, days can be as years, and we know that this prophetic is the after 6 days. What is this after 6 days? Right here. Right here. Which is after what? 1, 2, 3.5, which is 42 months that the beast had. And at the end of those 42 months, it's the after 6 days. And the after 6 days, the Lord comes. And we're going to talk more about this in what's being said here in a moment. But don't forget what they end up saying here. Remember, there's the whole Moses and the Elijah that were there. And not found in Luke. Remember, we start in Luke's, then we go to Mark's, then we go to Matthew's. There was no mention of them saying, hey, what about Elijah? I thought Elijah comes first. You don't see that in Luke's. You don't see it until Mark's, which is at the end of the 6 years on the sowing and reaping side, right? Which is really what? Well, it's really going to be like 5.5 years. Hello. Remember, because it's going to be cut short? It's after 6 days, 6 years, because it's a sowing and reaping side count, but in reality, it will have only played out over 5.5 and a little bit of the 50 that came first. That's your cutting short. So here we are at the end of the 6 days on the sowing and reaping side, or 6 years, and they ask him, and they say in Mark 9:11, and they asked him saying, why say the scribes that Elijah comes first, or must come first? And he answered and told them, Elijah verily cometh first and restores all things, and how it is written of the Son of Man that he must suffer many things and be set at naught. But I say unto you that Elijah is indeed come, and they had done unto him whatsoever they listed, as it is written of him. See what's happened? He's told them, hey, Elijah already came. Well, isn't that exactly what we were able to just show? That the Elijah company was already here? The Elijah company did come. They were there in the midst of seals. They were the ones contending with the beast and the false prophet and the Jezebel, the mystery Babylon, showing that they were already there. Why? Because they represent the John the Baptist. And there is a picture of that typology with Moses, as we covered as well. Now, we see, if we go to Malachi, we see that this story of the Elijah, John the Baptist, yes, of course, John the Baptist was the Elijah of his time, but it is crystal clear that there is another Elijah for the end of days, obviously. And we see it in Malachi chapter 4, right at the end of Malachi, right at the end of the Old Testament, right? And first in verse 4, it says, remember ye the law of Moses, my servant. Well, it just so happened we know Moses and Elijah are the servant companies at that time, which I commanded unto him in Horeb for all Israel with the statutes and judgments. And then here we see the last 2 verses. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Now, was the great and dreadful day of the Lord when he came the first time? Obviously not. This is the end of the sixth seal, the end of the 6th year of seals at the coming of the Lord. Meaning the Elijah prophet and the company of the Elijah had to have come in the midst of seals, as we've been teaching this whole time, okay, over the last several years. That's exactly what it's saying. And it says, and he shall turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and smite the earth with a curse. Okay? We know this. This is why in Mark's discourse, we read that it will be father against son, mother against daughter, daughter-in-law and father, mother-in-law, and so forth. But when you get to Matthew's discourse, you have no more conversation of father against son, mother against daughter. The context is written differently. Why? Because at the end of seals, they were reunited. They came back. The fathers and sons, their hearts of the parents and the fathers and the children and the mothers were brought back together for the great multitude, because the Elijah company was there, that were scattered all throughout the earth, and these people were led to the places where the Moses company were, these places of protection in the wilderness, before the great and coming and the dreadful day of the Lord, which is, of course, when he comes after 6 days. Okay? When he comes at the end of the 6th seal. It just so happens that here it is, right? Revelation 6. In fact, if you want to go back a little bit further to the start of the 6th seal, the start of the 6th seal is, let's go to Revelation 12. Where are you, Revelation? Oh, there it is. Remember in Revelation 12 we were talking about when the dragon appears, when he's going to be in heaven and appears, and then look what happens. And his tail draws a third of the stars to heaven, okay? And did cast them before he stood. And then you see the coming of the Son of Man. This is, of course, the same time, okay? He's to rule all nations with a rod of iron. This is him coming at the end of the 6th seal. But you see this casting down of a third of the stars that comes before it. Well, we see the after 6 days with the Lord, and what do we see at the 6th seal? And lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, which is also from Mark's discourse, by the way, at the coming of the Son of Man. And the stars of heaven fell unto the earth, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. And then what ends up happening? Then the coming of the Lord is about to be seen. And it says, and the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Well, isn't that funny? What did Malachi just say? From the coming great and dreadful day of the Lord. You see, that's the end of seals. That's the end of the 6th seal at the coming of the Lord. Again, it's after 6 days. Remember this incredible teaching that in Mark chapter 9, in fact, there's so many teachings. You know, this is what I was saying at the beginning. When you go into these things, and we're going to cover this probably, give or take, over 3 hours here tonight, and the last one was almost 3 hours, then the next one might be 2.5 hours or so, that all of this is just touching on the revelations of these things. Because within every story, like this one right here, verse 1, we've got a teaching on it that relates to Luke's and Mark's and Matthew's version of it. And then we've got other teachings that relate to Luke, Mark, and Matthew's portions of why after 6 days and after 6 days, but Matthew's is about an 8th day. We've got other teachings that go into verse 3. You kidding me? This is what I'm talking about how detailed and how deep we can go in these things. You see, because in this one here, there's 2 great pieces of revelation in it, and it's the word fuller and the word white. Let's go to it real quick, okay? This is in Mark chapter 9, and we're talking now, the beast is 42 months, is coming to an end at the coming of the Lord. And remember what it says in Mark 9:1. they have seen the kingdom of God come with power. Remember, this is the one that's past tense, meaning they will have seen God come with power. Okay? The kingdom of God come with power. But they didn't yet go to it. They will have seen it come. That's because, as we've taught, the mid-trib great multitude doesn't happen right away as he's coming. It happens after they will have seen him come and destroy the enemies. Then it's the mid-trib great multitude. And we're going to break that down because that's in portions of people. So again, here we are, the after 6 days. Now, what was I talking about in verse 3? It says, and his raiment became shining exceeding white as snow, as no fuller. You see, this word is used one time in the New Testament. So as no fuller can white them. This word white is used twice. The only other place this word is used for white is in Revelation chapter 7 at the great multitude. Isn't that crazy? For those who were given the white robes, that's them that had to make them white, meaning they had to go through the tribulation for their robes to be made white. And what about this word fuller? This word fuller, which is only used one time, it's also connected to the same story of the Elijah company. Okay? The Elijah and the Moses. We read it here in Malachi chapter 3. Listen to all of this. This tells us so much in these 4 verses in Malachi chapter 3. Behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me. Okay, so that's the Elijah, John the Baptist. Now listen to this. And the Lord whom you seek shall suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant whom you delight in. That sounds like the Lord and Christ coming, right? Like the Father and the Son. That's pretty crazy. Well, if you see the one who sits on the throne and the Lamb, and yeah, we got to understand what's coming at the end of seals. You know, again, the end of the 6th year of seals is a fabulous mystery that when it began to be revealed to me through the revelation of Scripture, it was one of those that my head was exploding. Okay? So let's keep going. Let's see what it says. In whom you delight, behold, he shall come, saith the Lord of hosts. But who may abide the day of his coming? Okay, again, this is the same time frame, the end of the 6th year. And who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like, here it is, fuller's soap. Isn't that funny? And like fuller's soap. And only Mark's picture of the Lord being at the end of the 6th year of seals, this is a picture of the transfiguration being the Lord coming at the end of the 6th year of seals. And what do we get? We get those who were made white, found in Revelation 7 at the mid-trib great multitude, and the Lord coming as the fuller, as that cleanser of the earth, which is directly at the timing of his coming at the end of the 6th year, and Malachi proves it. It's crazy. It's beautiful. It's perfect. This is all about the coming of the Lord and his wrath against the enemies of Israel, those who have scattered his people, and he's bringing about this destruction, this battle against them. So where does this have us now? Right here. Right here. See that? Right here at the Feast of Trumpets time. Right at the end of the 6 days or 6 years on the sowing and reaping side. And you want to know why this is awesome is, again, because if we go to Mark's discourse, we should be able to see this picture of this timing of the after 6 days of the coming of the Lord. Okay? There was the abomination, the fleeing into the wilderness, a worse time than ever, until what? Until Mark 13, verse 24. But in those days, after, listen to this, after that tribulation. You think people would have asked some questions about that? After that tribulation. Not immediately after the tribulation of those days, but that tribulation. Why? Because it's in 2 portions, as you know. Okay? And look what we read. The end of the sixth seal. The sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light. Okay, and the stars of heaven shall fall, and the powers that are in heaven shall be shaken. And then what do we see? And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in the clouds, plural. And again, there's your in. It means in here. And then watch what happens. When is this coming of the Lord? Remember, you don't find this in Luke. So this is the first time you're reading it in prophecy, going Luke, Mark, Matthew in the end of days. We now see in Mark 13:32, which, by the way, there's no mention of the days of Noah here, because that's not for Mark's time, right? The days of Noah are in Matthew's because it relates to the final 14th year of tribulation. So it says, but of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels which are in heaven, neither the Son, but the Father. Take ye heed, watch and pray, for you know not when the time is. For the Son of Man is a man taking a far journey, who left his house and gave authority to his servants. That's right. And to every man his work, and commanded the porter to watch. Watch ye therefore, for you know not when the master of the house cometh, at even, or at midnight, or the cock crowing, or in the morning. Okay? Lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. And what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch. What is the day and hour? No one knows. It's not a mystery, guys. We've known this forever. People love to talk about it every Feast of Trumpets until the Feast of Trumpets passes, and then they go on to the next thing as if it doesn't even exist for the Feast of Trumpets. This day and hour no one knows is the Feast of Trumpets. When he comes at the end of 6 days, 6 years, which is right here at the Feast of Trumpets, which is precisely after the 42 months that the beast had, you end up at the day and hour no one knows. Because the Feast of Trumpets is a 2-day period of which you don't know when the crescent of the moon will be fully seen. And it's called the day and hour no one knows. It's not kind of. It's not, oh, that's sometimes it, but it could be. No, that's what it is. And the end of days has proven it. It's revealed it. This is the timing of the Lord coming at the end of the 6th year of seals. That's why we have it. That's what's been given to us. And it's after the 6 days, just as we've shown. So where are we now? We're now right here. The beast that was and is not, right? So we're coming now to the end of the beast and his was. We started today at the beginning of the was, which was after World War III, and now we're just coming to the end of his was. What happens at the end of his was? Let's read. And the 10 horns, which thou sawest, we know where the 10 horns come from, right? The 10 horns come from Daniel chapter 7 that we saw earlier. They come from Revelation 13. So it says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, the end of the 6th year of seals, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. You notice one uppercase L, one uppercase K. Okay? Not like Revelation 13, which is a different battle, which is the final battle at the 14th year, when at the end it's all uppercase, Lord of lords and King of kings. This is the first sword that we talk about from Luke chapter 20 or 22, when he tells them to go get a sword. I've always talked about how I love that story, where he tells all the disciples, go get a sword, sell your clothes, do whatever you have to get a sword. And they're like, you can see they're talking amongst themselves. And then they turn around and they're like, do you have a sword? Do you have a sword? I don't have a sword. Do you have a sword? And they're like, they got 2 of them. They turn around, they're like, hey, Lord, we've got 2. Is that good? And Jesus is like, yeah, that's enough. Okay. It's the craziest wild story, but it's prophetic. And it's prophetic is the 2 battles. It's the 2 swords of the Lord at the end of the 6th year of seals, and or say at the end of the 6th year, start of the 7th year of seals, and at the end of 13 years of tribulation, or at the end of the 6th year of trumpets, at the start of the 7th year of trumpets, when the Lord returns feet down. That's the 2nd sword. So again, what are we seeing? We're seeing him fight against the beast. Okay? The beast and the 10 horns, the 10 kings that are with them. This is exactly what happens in Daniel chapter 7. We see now in Daniel chapter 7, this is when the beast has had his 42 months come to an end. And it says, "And I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was as pure wool, and his throne was like a fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire." Could you imagine what's coming at the end of Seals? Could you imagine? Not at the end of Seals, but at the end of the 6th year of Seals. If we have truly understand as much as I believe we have in all of Revelation, we're talking about, give or take, 5.5 years from now. What is going to be seen coming from above is going to be a freak out. Okay? It's going to be a freak out. Okay? And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a moment. And it says, "And a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him." Okay? The servants, the workers, and the pre-trib. "The judgment was set, and the books were opened. And I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to a burning flame." Okay? This isn't him being cast into the lake of fire. This is him being destroyed from the flame of the Lord and being cast into the pit. And it says, as concerning, now, who else is included with this beast? Well, the horns, right? Because the 10 horns are connected to the beast. But it says the rest of the beasts. Who are the rest of the beasts? Okay? Of course, we know it's the lion, the bear, and the leopard. And you've also got the false prophet in there. Because the ones that are killed is the beast, and the beast is the one that has the 10 horns. Okay? As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, and their lives were prolonged for a season and time. Now listen to this. "And I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven." Again, him coming in marks, right? Coming in the clouds of heaven, "and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him, and there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, and all people, nations, languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion." Okay? What ends up happening? What are we seeing happen here? What is this going to look like when it's coming down? What is it? Well, first of all, what it's going to be is it's the battle of Ezekiel chapter 39. Okay? When it says, "I will send fire." Hello. Do you get that now? This is the burning that he's going to get. Okay? It's not because he's thrown into the lake of fire yet. This is the end of the 6 years of Seals. So he sends fire on Magog, and among them that dwell carelessly in the isles, and they shall know that I am the Lord. This is the Ezekiel 39 battle. What is the world going to see? This is what I was telling you about earlier. Not that. We shared that in the last one, actually. But this right here. So I just did a quick search, because for me to scroll back to a found, it was going to take me like 10-15 minutes going through all the videos. So I just did a search, and I was able to find it on YouTube. From Ministry Revealed, the most important end time video, this one right here. This is crazy. This video is the one I was telling you about earlier from May 11th, 2018. I had no idea this revelation had come so soon in the ministry, in the revelation. This video is all about the coming of the Lord at the end of the 6th seal, like we're talking about now. You see, everybody is aware that the Lord is returning feet down on the Mount of Olives at the end of tribulation, right? That's not something that's been debated over the years. Everybody knows that. And then there's another group where it has been debated that the Lord is the white horse rider. Many people have debated that it's the Antichrist or that it is the Lord. Most people say it's the Antichrist. We have proven that it's the Lord, but there are many people that have already known over the hundreds of years that have believed and have had understanding that it is the Lord and not the Antichrist. But do you know something that nobody's ever understood? This right here. this point that we're at right now. Because this video, which remember, the timing of whatever I would have looked at it, timing was wrong, but the revelation was not wrong. This is one of the most wild mysteries of the end of days. Because as I just said, everybody knows the Lord's coming feet down at the end. Many have debated and sided with or against, even though most are against, many have understood that the Lord could be the white horse rider. But none have ever understood that it is the Lord at the end of the 6th year of seals. At the end of the 6th seal is the Lord coming at mid-trib with heavenly Mount Zion. This is a massive deal. And you know why it hasn't been understood? Because of what you guys know. If everybody believes the tribulation is 7 years, and the only way most people believe it is they sandwich. Some people will say the first 3.5 years of tribulation is the 7 seals, and the second half of 3.5 years is the 7 trumpets. Others, which I believe is the majority, will say no, seals and trumpets are sandwiched on top of each other. So at the first seal, there's the first trumpet, second seal, second trumpet, and they kind of sandwich together like that. So what happens is when you get to the end of the 6th seal, they look at that as the Lord coming at the 7th trumpet when he's returning feet down on the Mount of Olives. But you can't then understand or explain what it talks about throughout the rest of the scriptures when it comes to what the prophets talked about, nor can you understand what it talks about even in other parts of the book of Revelation. This timing right here, this period of the Lord coming at the end of the 6th year of seals, he's not only coming, I mean, you have to remember, at the Lord's coming there, he's coming to rain down fire and destroy the enemies. Okay? To destroy the beast and the 10 kings that are with him. You have to understand, what did the end of the 6th seal say? What did it say? Let's see if we can find it real quick. What did it say? Everybody, it doesn't matter if they were rich, poor, great men, kings, it doesn't matter who they were, bondmen, free, they all hid themselves in dens and in rocks of the mountains and cried on them to fall on them. Isn't that crazy? That means what on earth are they seeing that rich and poor and kings and bond people and slaves, everybody, they are so freaked out at what they're seeing that they would rather die than have to face what they're seeing coming. And yet it's the Lord. What is so terrifying? It's the Lord coming on heavenly Mount Zion. It is the Lord coming with paradise. And it's going to probably look like some sort of ginormous mountain ship. I don't know. Didn't you just read the description that I read? Right? Did you read the description? The description of the Lord, his throne was like a fiery flame and his wheels like a burning fire. Something is going to be seen coming into our dimension from the spirit world, and it will manifest in this massive mountain-looking ship thing that is so big and so wild, the world is saying, mountains and dens that we have hidden in, please fall on us and crush us and kill us because I can't take what's about to come. This is the biggest part, one of the biggest pieces of mystery in the revelation. Of course, you can't get there without the revelation of the Gospels. You can't get there without the revelation of the 14 years. But once you get it and you get to this is one of the biggest things in prophecy. That one of the biggest mysteries is this coming of the Lord at the end of the 6th year of seals. It's him coming on heavenly Mount Zion, and that in itself is bananas to think about. Okay? So what are we seeing? He's now going to destroy Gog, right? The beast and the 10 kings that were with him. We see that battle. And then look what it says. In verse 9 of Ezekiel 39, it says, and they that dwell in the cities of Israel shall go forth and they shall set on fire and burn the weapons, both the shields and the bucklers, the bows and the arrows, and the handstaves and the spears, and they shall burn them with fire for 7 years. This was another incredible, seemingly simple, but incredible mystery, because what happens is if you go to Joel chapter 3, which prophetically is the end of tribulation, we see that there's a conversation where it says they're to beat, in Joel 3:10, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. And when you understand when Joel 1 is speaking to the near the beginning of tribulation, Joel 2 is speaking to the end of seals, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, just to show that connection. And Joel 3, which we're not going to talk about now except to make this point, is at the end of tribulation, at the coming of the Lord, feet down. And it's saying that they got to beat their plowshares back into swords. Now, why is that? That's because this 7 years, this incredible, seemingly very mysterious piece of 7 years, has confused so many people. Remember where we are. The Lord is defeating them here in the Ezekiel 39 war. He has come down with heavenly Mount Zion. Everybody's freaking out. He destroys the beast and the 10 kings, and then says to turn all their weapons into plowshares, into pruning hooks, and so forth. And it says that it's going to be for 7 years. What is year 1 of those 7 years? It's the 7th year right here. It's the 7th year of the no sowing, no reaping year. It's this one right here. And so there's year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 years ends at the end of the 13 years of tribulation, or at the end of the 6th year of trumpets, so that when the Lord returns, feet down on the Mount of Olives at the beginning of the 14th year, the 7 years will have been over. And what Joel chapter 3 is saying, now turn your plowshares into spears and your pruning hooks into swords. This is why. Because this is going to be the battle that you read about in Zechariah chapter 14 when the Lord returns feet down on the Mount of Olives, which is the battle of Revelation 19 with the King of Kings and Lord of Lords at the treading of the grapes. And in Zechariah 14, he tells them that Jerusalem and his people will gather together and fight in that battle. That's why they need to turn them back into swords and weapons. Crazy. I told you the depth of the revelation is over the top. And so what else do we know at this time? It says, and 7 months shall the house of Israel be cleansing the land, be bearing them and cleansing the land. So the battles happened here, the 7 years of burning the weapons, which means 7 months they'll be bearing, which will take it from about what? Feast of Trumpets until second Passover. Until about this time of second Passover. You got to remember what the Lord is coming with when this happens, okay? It's wildness. And what is the Old Testament prophetic picture? It's the end of Moses' time, remember? Just as we saw the story that the Elijah company, so the Elijah, his time that he did already come, he did restore the fathers and sons, mothers and daughters. Well, the one who was in the wilderness, the Moses type, who was leading them in the wilderness, in the Moses company, what ends up happening to Moses? Before going into the promised land, which is a picture of the end of 6 years of seals, the Moses type died just as the John the Baptist died. But the Elijah company doesn't. He goes up in the whirlwind. So what do we see? Moses, the servant of the Lord, now dies. And who's the one who takes them over into the promised land? Well, we go from, did you see where we went from? We just went from the very end of Deuteronomy, chapter 34, where Moses dies, and we went to now Joshua, chapter 1. And it says, now after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, it came to pass that the Lord spake unto Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' minister. And what did he do? He took them over the Jordan and into the promised land. Who is Joshua? We all know that Joshua is an exact prophetic picture of Jesus Yeshua. Exact prophetic picture of Jesus Yeshua. We see it here in Zechariah chapter 6, another prophetic picture of the end of the 6th year of seals, okay, on the sowing and reaping side. And what does it say? Verse 11, take the silver and gold and make crowns and set them upon the head of Joshua, the son of Josedek, but it's the same typology of the Joshua Yeshua. And he's called what? The high priest. Because we know at the coming of the Lord at this point, he is coming as Messiah ben Ephraim / Joseph, same thing. He is coming as high priest and king. And it says, speak unto him, saying, thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, behold, the man whose name is the branch. So there's another guy whose name is the branch. So Joshua, Yeshua, Joshua, high priest and king, and the branch. And he shall grow out of his place, and he shall build the temple of the Lord. Who's the one who built the temple of the Lord? Zechariah chapter 4 told us. Whoever the modern day, end of days Zerubbabel will be, he is the one who is going to build the foundation of the house of the Lord in the midst of seals that we ended with in the last teaching, that he's going to be the one to oversee the rebuilding of the foundation of the temple, but then it'll get stopped and all these things because the beast and all that stuff that's taking place. So it'll stop and there will be nothing else built after the foundation. And what does it say? The branch is the one who's going to build the temple. Well, who's the one who's going to build the temple? It just said in Zechariah 4 that it says whoever built the foundation, his hands are also going to finish it. Okay? His hands are going to finish. They're going to build the temple. So we know who it is. Okay? It's the modern day Zerubbabel who is the branch. And Joshua, who is the high priest, who is the Messiah Lord Jesus who's coming. He is the prophetic picture. And it says, even he, so again, the Zerubbabel, even he shall build the temple of the Lord, and he shall bear the glory and sit and rule upon his throne, and he shall be a priest upon his throne, and the counsel of peace shall be between them both. Joshua the high priest and the branch who is Zerubbabel. Okay? Who is the greater? The high priest. Okay? Yeshua Jesus, the high priest and king, that's the one closest to the Father. Okay? The branch is overseeing the rebuilding of the temple and the city and streets, while the Lord is the high priest and king who is going to now be with the 144,000. So when we go back and we look at, okay, we'll go to it in a second. And again, so to be able to prove this with Joshua, this is something we've done numerous times over the years, is in Numbers chapter 13. You see, from the tribe of Ephraim is Hosea, right, who is Hosea, the son of Nun. And what happens? Moses changes his name from Hosea, son of Nun, to Yeshua. Okay? Joshua Yeshua is the one who's going to take them over into the promised land. And when we get to Zechariah, we've got another type of Yeshua, Joshua, who is another prophetic picture of the Lord, who's going to be the high priest and king when the temple is going to be rebuilt by the modern Zerubbabel, who is the branch, and the two of them will rule together. But of course, they are what? They are the two witnesses that begin the time of trumpet judgments. They are the two witnesses of the trumpets time, and one is the high priest and king, the Lord Yeshua, ruling in the midst of his enemies, and the Zerubbabel type is the one overseeing the rebuilding of the temple. Okay? That Messiah David type even. Okay? And we see this being revealed right here. Now, watch what happens, because we know that at the coming of the Lord, in Jeremiah 31, something we've studied on many times and done teachings on many of these things to go further in depth. We know that in verse 8, this is all about the mid-trib now great multitude. It says, behold, I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the coasts of the earth, and with them the blind and the lame, the woman with child, and her that travaileth with child, together a great company. In the Strong's Concordance, this means great multitude, shall return thither. And when we go to the Septuagint, it says that it would be at Passover. Isn't that exactly what we were talking about this spring? Remember the 7 months of burying the bones? And then they would be brought over. It could be at Passover. I believe it's most likely at second Passover, which would make the 7 months. It's incredible. Okay? And what does it go on to say? Verse 9, they shall come with weeping and with supplications. Will I lead them, and I will cause them to walk by the rivers of waters in a straight way, wherein they shall not stumble. For I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. What? Ephraim is my firstborn? Yes, because Yeshua, the Messiah, is coming, as you know, at the end of the 6 years of seals. He is coming as Messiah ben Ephraim, the ox of the lead tribe of the west. This is when the Lord is coming. You guys know this. We've got, and you want to talk about another one. We've got incredible, powerful teachings about the placement of the tribes in the end of days and the reason for their layout and the lead tribes in the wilderness throughout that time. It reveals the end of days within it. And what does the Lord then say? Hear the word of the Lord, O you nations, and declare it in the isles far off, and say, he that scattered Israel will gather them and keep them as a shepherd does his flock. Who do you think that is? Of course, that's the Lord, right? Of course, that's no mystery there. So here the Lord is. He's come at the end. He's destroyed the enemy. What did we see in Malachi chapter 3? Okay, we see the one who prepared the way. Then we see the Lord, the Lord whom you seek, and the messenger of the covenant that's with him, who's going to be able to abide in the day of his coming. He's like a refiner's fuller's soap. And then look what happens. So we know that this is after the 6 days as 6 years. Okay, we know it's him at the end of Revelation chapter 6, just like at the end of the 6 days, 6 years. Okay, look what it says next. What comes after this period as well? He's destroyed the enemies, and now what's going to happen in the 7th year? Well, look at what it says. And he shall sit as a refiner of pure silver, and he shall purify, listen to this, the sons of Levi, and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness. Listen to this. Then shall the offering of Judah and Jerusalem be pleasant unto the Lord, as in the days of old, as in former years. Remember, Jesus has 2 sheep, 2 sets of sheep that he has to bring in from John chapter 21. The lambs were the pre-trib. Then you've got the mid-trib of the sheep, and you've got Judah of the other sheep. The first sheep, which is the middle one, is the house of Israel and the Gentiles that were grafted in. And then it says, and other sheep in John chapter 10, and other sheep I have which I must bring also. Okay, which are not of this flock, that I must bring also, and they will be one flock and one shepherd. There will be one shepherd and one flock. Okay, he's bringing in the great multitude mid-trib of where are the Gentiles going? You see, this is something I mentioned right near the beginning, that there's portions at the mid-trib, different portions, and what it is the mid-trib great multitude is, you see that he was with the Levitical line. Well, what do we have here? What starts after the Lord's coming and his defeating of the enemies? We then see the 144,000, a new priestly line, a new Levitical line being sealed. And then we have the great multitude rapture. What happens after this great multitude rapture? If we keep going in Jeremiah, and we go down to Jeremiah 31:31, it says, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Not the covenant like I made with them in times past with their fathers, but a new one that will start with Israel and be with Judah as well. Okay? So, what do we see? The 144,000 being sealed, then the great multitude, and it's lining up with everything we were seeing in Malachi. prepared the way. He's coming as messenger of the covenant. Then the day of the Lord's coming, fuller soap, the Levitical line, and then an offering for Judah and Jerusalem that will now be pleasant unto the Lord. Who? Remember they were blinded? Remember he blinded them for our sakes? Well, now what's happened? At his coming, you have the Levitical line, you have the mid-trib great multitude rapture being taken to paradise, and now he's going to accept the other sheep. Now he's ready to accept the other sheep. Their eyes will be opened. So what happens is you've got the great multitude, mid-trib, and where are they going? They are, of course, the was caught up into paradise. You see how it all flows from Revelation chapter 12? From the beast and the 42 months when the dragon gives him his seat and his authority, to the casting of the stars, to the Son of Man who's going to rule them with a rod of iron at the end of the 6th year of seals at his coming. And then you have the was caught up. That's the mid-trib great multitude. That's the group going to paradise. But do you know there's kind of 3 portions at this time? Did you guys realize that? Because at the time when the Lord's coming, this is something that blows people away. But this is what we were talking about at the why people are freaking out because they're seeing this coming. Okay, not only why they're freaking out because they're seeing it coming, but we know what's coming. But how did anybody explain this in the past? You see, John 14 tells us what is coming. Okay, when Jesus said, starting in John 14 verse 2, it says, "In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also." Which means he's going to prepare a place and come back with the place that he went to prepare to receive them to where he is. That's paradise, brothers and sisters. That's paradise. That's the many mansions in paradise, which is part of the kingdom of God, that the mid-trib was caught up is going to. The third heaven where the pre-trib went, that's in the throne room. Like that's the inner court, if you will. Okay, that's also part of the kingdom of God. This is the mid-trib where everybody's going. This, what they've seen coming that everybody was freaked out about, was what Jesus said he was going to put together and bring back with him when he came at the end of seals. You see, if you haven't been around for a while, you don't understand why this is in John 14. Because we've got deeper revelations on these things in what we call chapters to years. Hosea 14 chapters, Zechariah 14 chapters, John 21 chapters plays out as the 7 easy years, 7 years of seals, 7 years of trumpets. Look at this. And what does this mean? This means within each of these chapters is there's a verse or two, or most of the chapter, depending on the book, that gives clues or tells you what's going to take place prophetically in the end of days. And look at what John 14 equals. John 14 equals the 7th year of seals. Isn't that crazy? You want to know why it's crazy? Because it's the exact year to chapter that Jesus says he went to prepare a place and he's going to return and receive them to where he is. So what ends up happening? Well, again, the Lord is now going to gather who? If the mid-trib great multitude is is Jeremiah 31:8, then who is the house of Israel and the house of Judah, who he's going to make that new covenant with? When is he going to make that new covenant? Okay? Well, first of all, you know what? First of all, let's go to this. When is the Lord going to make this new covenant? He's going to make this new covenant right here at the 7th seal. We have one little blurb, one little verse about the 7th seal, and I've always found it interesting that it wasn't at the end of chapter 7. It's only one verse. Why wasn't it just put at the end of chapter 7? But instead it's put at the beginning of chapter 8. It says that, and when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour. I believe that is about 1 hour being a year, and about half of it being about 5 months or 7 months. Well, if the 7 months were what we talked about earlier, that, the 7 months of bearing the bones, then that only leaves what? 5 months. Okay? Now, whether it's in this portion here or maybe in this portion here, just as you see, the seven seals maybe right here, and it's in the beginning of chapter 8, which is the first year of trumpet judgments. It's pretty wild. Okay? But it's right in this range right here. And what's happening? I believe it's going to be about 5 months. This is this silence in heaven. This is the time when the Lord is making his covenant with all nations. Right here at the end of the seventh year of seals. That's where the Lord's covenant is being made. Now, remember what happens. If we go to Genesis chapter 8, and you guys know this picture, so I'm not going to go too far into the details. We know the 40 days of the Son of Man, then the raven spirit going out, and then the dove. That's the 50th day. And then at the end of 50 days, you have 7 years, 7 days of seals, 7 years, 7 days of trumpets. We know that the word stayed is tribulation because it's the beginning of the 14 years as the red horse rider. So what happens after those 7 days, 7 years in Genesis 8, verse 11? It says, and the dove came into him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. Okay? Olive leaf can be leaf, but also branch, and it's plucked off. Why am I bringing this up? Because the Gentiles are grafted in. Remember what I was just talking about a few minutes ago, that there's more than just the mid-trib great multitude. What's happening is that the Gentiles were grafted in. Okay? We read this in Romans chapter 11. In Romans chapter 11, there's a whole bunch of this throughout it. Okay? But we read starting in verse 17, and if some of the branches be broken off, and you being a wild olive tree were grafted in among them, and with them partake of the root and the fatness of the olive tree, it says, boast not against the branches, but if thou boast, thou bearest not the root, but the root thee. Thou wilt then say, the branches, thou will say then, the branches are broken off that I might be grafted in. So what happened? The house of Israel, branches of the house of Israel were broken off, some of them it says, so that the Gentiles who were coming in could be grafted in. We know that the mid-trib, great multitude rapture of the Gentile portion of it is Gentiles who are going to where? They are going to paradise, okay, in the mid-trib great multitude. They are that branch that is now being broken off at the end of seals. Why? Because they're being taken. They're part of a harpazo as well. They are being raptured, harpazoed in the Greek, to paradise. They're also going to vanish, never having tasted of death, those who are still alive. Remember, about 1.2 billion in change, of which maybe a few hundred were killed, but the majority still alive. Okay? Some had white robes and others with palms in their hands because they were still alive. That's the representation in Revelation 7. So what we see is now the Gentile branch being broken off because their time is over. So now what happens? It says, well, listen to this. So now we're at the end of seals. So if Gentiles were the branch grafted in, because the old branch of a house of Israel, many of them were broken off so that we could be grafted in, and now it's the end of seals, and the Gentile age is over, which is at the end of seals. The Gentile age is over. Then what can happen? He can graft the natural branch back in. And that's what we're seeing. It says, well, because of unbelief, they were broken off, and you standest by faith. Don't be high-minded, but fear. For if God spared not the natural branches, take heed lest he also spare not you. Behold, therefore, the goodness and severity of God on them which fell, severity, but toward you goodness, if you continue. Hello. If you continue in his goodness, otherwise you shall be cut off. And then listen to this. So now we know the Gentiles were grafted in because some of the house of Israel were broken off. At the end of seals, what we're talking about here is at the mid-trib great multitude rapture, the Gentile branch, the wild one grafted in, is now taken off because it's vanishing too. It's now going in the mid-trib great multitude to paradise in the was caught up of the mid-trib. And then what happens? Then the Lord is able, look at this in verse 23, Romans 11, and they also, if they abide still not in unbelief, okay, or sorry, no, if they abide not still in unbelief, so if they're no longer going to be in unbelief and they're going to change their mind and come to belief, they shall be grafted in. For God is able to graft them in again. For if you were cut off of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted in contrary to nature into a good olive tree, how much more shall these, which be the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? Do you know why? Do you know what this is talking about? You see, this is the Lord having taken the wild, grafted in olive branch of the Gentiles, now in the mid-trib great multitude to paradise. Well, who's then going to go back to Israel? Who's going back to Jerusalem to rebuild the city, the streets, the temple? Didn't it tell us there's the house of Israel and the house of Judah still? You see, out of the great multitude of the mid-trib that is grafted into the house of Israel like the Gentiles are, the majority of the mid-trib, the vast majority, is going to paradise because they're Gentiles. But there is a remnant from the true house of Israel that will recognize the Lord and will now be grafted back in. You see? And when they're grafted back in, we just saw in Jeremiah 31 that it says, but this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. So even though it's going to be with Israel and Judah, as he said over here, it's going to start with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. And I will put my law in their inward parts and write it on their hearts, and they will be my people, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. You see, because there is a remnant of the house of Israel. And Judah will also then come in as well. They are the other sheep that he must also bring in. And they're also at the end of seals, at the end, right towards the end of that 7th year, they're going to come to the Lord as well. This is that whole of that group that's going back to Jerusalem that are represented as the house of Israel and the house of Judah. You see, there's not 1.5 billion people or 1.2 billion people dead and alive, and the dead ones are going to be brought back to life to be in Jerusalem. That's not going to happen. You're not going to fit all those people in Jerusalem. That's because the majority are the mid-trib Gentiles who were grafted in that are now going to be broken off, gone to paradise, and now there is a remnant of the house of Israel, and there's a house of Judah that will then also come in, recognizing where they are, what this is, in this season and time that they're in. Do you get it? Do you get it? This is what's happening. You see, the Jews, I don't know if you know this, we've talked about this actually in the past, but what have rabbis been teaching for for thousands of years, generation after generation? You see, we dismiss the Jews, so many Christians, I shouldn't say we, but so many Christians dismiss the Jews as just being so wicked, not seeing or understanding the Lord. But they were blinded. They were blinded for our sakes. And you know what? They know that there are prophecies yet to be fulfilled about the Messiah that have not been fulfilled which is for their understanding. This is a big deal. This is why they say, no, this hasn't been fulfilled yet. Once this is fulfilled, we will know he's our Messiah. And to the Christian, we say, no, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. He already came. Are we right? Yes. But Romans tells us they're blinded for our sakes. They are enemies for our sakes, for the gospel's sake. But when the Gentile age is over at the end of seals, they will see and they will understand. Their eyes will be opened again. Why? Because for thousands of years, do you know what they've been taught? They have been taught that their Messiah will come down and destroy all of their enemies that came against them and scattered them and destroyed them and so forth, but came and scattered them. And he will cause the temple and make the decree for the temple to then get rebuilt, and the temple will get rebuilt. They know this and are taught this, that when this happens, there will be quote-unquote two messiahs. Remember, Messiah could just mean anointed one. One is the Messiah, and the other one is an anointed Messiah, okay? So they believe there's two, one being called Messiah ben Joseph / Ephraim, and the other one who is the Messiah ben David. What did we just say was coming? We just talked about the Messiah ben Joseph, or Messiah ben Ephraim, who is Jesus, the high priest, Joshua, Yeshua, who's taken them over into the promised land, which is after the end of seals when the Lord comes and finishes the job taking them back into the promised land. And then there's the Zerubbabel, what is he? The one who rules between the two, and the rule will be between the two of them, and Zerubbabel is the one who laid the foundation during seals. And now what happens at the beginning of trumpets? The decree to rebuild the temple, and it's the Zerubbabel who is the overseeing of the rebuilding of the temple. So when does the Lord come as the Messiah ben Ephraim to destroy all the enemies of Israel? At the end of the sixth seal in the Ezekiel 39 war. When he comes, he's coming as who? He's coming as the Messiah ben Ephraim. He is coming as the ox. And when he comes as the ox and destroys them, they're going to be gathered back with incredible Mount Zion there that the Lord came down on. And Jerusalem is then going to be decreed with the Zerubbabel there, and the rebuilding of the temple is going to start. This is exactly what prophecy reveals to us happens at the end in the final year of seals and the very beginning of trumpets. Don't you find that amazing? I find that, you see, this goes back as to why the revelation of the Lord coming on heavenly Mount Zion with this place prepared as he said he would, why that prophecy, why that revelation of that mystery is such a big deal, because it goes so much deeper. You see, it brings us to the point of where the Jews know their prophecy of their Messiah comes. But to the Christian, they can never understand it, because you see, they're enemies for the gospel's sake. They're blinded for the Christian's sake. But to the Christians, they're blind to the understanding that the Jews have as well. The Christians will say no, because the tribulation's only 7 years, that it's going to be the Antichrist who's going to decree the rebuilding of the temple. And then it's going to get rebuilt, and then he's going to step into the temple and declare himself God. You see, yet at no point in history was the temple ever built by the enemy. Never once. You see that? So why are the Christians so twisted on it? You see, they will tell the Jews that they're going to fall for the Antichrist, and they're going to follow the Antichrist because he's going to decree the temple being rebuilt. And the Jews say that no, their Messiah is going to rebuild the temple. Okay, he's going to destroy all of the enemies around them and that came and destroyed them. He's going to gather them back, and then the temple is going to be decreed to be rebuilt. To the Christian, that sounds like, oh, they're going to fall for the Antichrist, who's going to break out in this war and then stop the war and decree a temple to be rebuilt. But when he goes in, he's going to declare himself to be God. So they've twisted all of these things and sandwich mashed them into one 7-year period. But when you understand the revelation of 14 years, do you see how beautiful it is? Because this mid-trib point is so incredibly powerful, because you see, I didn't know all those things that the Jews believed would happen at their time. I only revealed through the understanding, through the mysteries of the revelation of Scripture, that proved out that the Lord was coming with heavenly Mount Zion, the place prepared at the end of seals. And that when he did, he would destroy all the enemies in the Ezekiel 39 war, and then there would be the decree to now rebuild the temple on the foundation that was laid during seals. And then I come to find out that the Jews, that the rabbis for centuries and centuries, for millenniums, have been decreeing that the Messiah will come. When their Messiah comes, he will destroy all their enemies and decree the temple to be rebuilt. You see how powerful that is? We have the mystery of the revelation that combines the mistakes of prophecy of the church and the missing understanding of the Jews. Because what the Jews haven't understood for their most part is that they must be removed from the land for 7 years so that it rests before the Lord will allow his temple to be rebuilt on it. Those are the 7 years of seals. You see, they don't believe, most Jews don't believe they have to be removed from the land. They believe they've been brought there. Their time is now, and it will always be until the Lord comes and destroys their enemy and decrees the rebuilding of the temple. You see how it's all twisted? We have the mystery, the revelation of the end of days, proven by the Gospels and the 14 years from the beginning of Genesis to the end of Revelation, that proves where the Christians have mixed it up and where the Jews have understood it but missed the first part. It's so powerful. That's why I get so riled up and so just, man, I can't believe it. Because all the way back in May of 2018, that was how powerful I knew that mystery was of the Lord coming on heavenly Mount Zion. You see, we even see it here in Psalms 110. It says, "The Lord said unto my Lord, Sit thou at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. And the Lord shall send the rod of thy strength out of Zion. Rule thou in the midst of thine enemies." Okay? So he's still going to rule in the midst of his enemies. And what is he going to be? The Lord hath sworn and will not repent. Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. That's the Lord, of course. Okay? That is Messiah. This is the Messiah ben Ephraim, the high priest and king, when he comes on heavenly Mount Zion, when he comes with paradise. Okay? We see this is the mystery. This is the revelation that we've shared in Daniel chapter 9. The word weeks is as years. So 70 weeks as 70 years. All you have to do is go to verse 2. Okay, Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. Why is the wording in here seeming so difficult? Because there was a prophecy in the revelation of this to the time of Christ. And then there's a prophecy in this to the time of the end of days. Okay, so you can have your 70 times your multiples of 7 for weeks. But in the end of days, it's at the end of 70 weeks or 70 years. What is the end of 70 years? Of course, this is what we've been teaching this whole time. This end of 70 years of Jerusalem that ends at Nisan this year and starts the 71st year of Jerusalem from 1950 in a Leviticus 19 count. Okay? So this is why we're saying this timing, as well as when Israel came into the land in 1948, which is the land the Lord gave unto them, whereas Jerusalem is his land. And listen to what it says now. In Daniel 9:25, "Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem," which means Jerusalem must be attacked and destroyed at some point. When is it attacked and destroyed? You guessed it, right at the beginning of the 14 years. Okay? "A command to restore and to build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince." This is unto Christ. But as Messiah, they would say, okay? "Unto the Messiah the Prince shall be" what? 7 weeks. What are these 7 weeks? 7 years. Just like the 70 weeks, 70 years. Now we're at remember, this is the end time revelation of it. So here's the 7 weeks, 7 years of seals. Are they going to rebuild the city streets and temple in the midst of the 7 years of seals? No. We just explained that. That's not going to happen until the start of trumpets. All they will have built was the foundation so that they can build the temple and streets once the 7 years are over, which is how long the land must rest before the Lord can build on it. That's why he's removed them from the land. And then look at what it says. Comma and, Daniel 9:25. Comma and, meaning separate and addition to, 62 weeks. You see, why is it worded like this? Remember, it was a prophecy for when Christ was coming the first time, and it's a prophecy for the end of days. This 62 weeks, you'll notice no comma because they're connected together. They're not two separate things, okay? Directly two separate things. We have what? 2 weeks, which means 2 years. And what is 60? It's 60. But it's not weeks, it's separate from the weeks, which is years. So I believe that these 60, which are 60, are actual physical, not yet counted weeks, like 7 days in a week. So 60 would be 1 year and 2 months. So you have 1 year and 2 months plus 2 years is 3 years and 2 months. Okay? Weeks as years, weeks as years, and the separate 60 is 60, which I believe is not weeks as years, but as literal weeks, which makes it a total of 10 years, 7 and 2 plus 1 year and 2 months, a total of almost 3.5 years, or 10 years and 2 months. Okay? Now, what's going to happen during this? I always say about 3.5 years. Okay? 7 years of seals are done. Now we're at the start of trumpets, about 3.5 years. And what does it say? The streets shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. So now the city, the streets, the temple is now going to be rebuilt, and the wall in troublous times. You see that? When does this start? At the end of the 7 years of seals. You're now at the time when they're going to rebuild the city, streets, and temple. When? After Messiah came at the end of the 6th year of seals, destroyed all their enemies, and now, just as the Jews have been taught, the Messiah who came down, destroyed their enemies, is now going to make the decree to rebuild the city, streets, and temple. And the Zerubbabel, who was the person who was already here in existence, lives now, is the one who laid the foundation. And now at this point, he is going to be the other Messiah, the other anointed one, and he will decree, or not decree, but he will be the one now to oversee the literal, true rebuilding of the temple. You see, I went and did a quick search for you guys, and it even tells you this, okay? It was the rabbis that teach the Messiah, okay? It always switches when it regenerates, and that bothers me because it showed what we were talking about, okay? In Jewish tradition, the belief in the Messiah includes the expectation that he will defeat Israel's enemies and facilitate the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. One of the two, or the two figures, are the Messiah ben Joseph or Ephraim and Messiah ben David. Do you see? Christians will say, they're going to fall for the Antichrist, when in reality, it's the actual Messiah coming at the end of seals. It's the actual Messiah where most Christians, which is the 90% of the church who remain during seals, some falling away and new ones coming in, have never understood and were against Jews, saying they don't understand who the Messiah is and they're going to fall for the Antichrist, when in reality, they know who their Messiah is. It's that they're blinded until the age of the Gentiles is over. This is how powerful the revelation is. This is how powerful this mystery is. This is why it's such a massive deal at the end of seals. Such a great, massive, huge deal, because of what's going to be seen coming that will be out of this world crazy, and what it will mean to the world as a whole at that time, with the beast now being destroyed from the time that it was worst in all of human history up to that point during his 42 months, until the Lord destroys them and all the enemies of Israel. The Ezekiel 39 war has the mid-trib great multitude of the Gentiles that he will gather now to himself in paradise. and then will gather the remnant of the house of Israel and the house of Judah, the other sheep that he has. Because why? Because they have been taught generation after generation after generation that their Messiah will come and destroy their enemies that have defeated and scattered them, and will decree the final temple to be built. Don't you understand now, or I should say now you understand? This is why the Jews have been blinded for our sakes, and their time will come. They understand when their time will come, but Christians can't understand it because they're also blinded in their portion. They've missed, they've erred. The Jews have erred as well, but they know when their time is, or they know what they're looking for in their time, because seals is not their time either. Hello. They're being destroyed and removed, and then everything turns to the focus against the Christians. Because now this is their final time to wake up. And when their time to wake up is over and the Gentile age comes to the end, bam, the Jews will recognize it, because for 2,000 years they've been taught it. Crazy, right? And what does Scripture tell us about it? It's at that point that he will then, they will recognize him, right? They will hear his voice, and it will be one shepherd and one flock. They will recognize his voice, and they will also go to him. Why didn't they recognize his voice before? Why didn't they see him or understand him before? Because they were blinded for the Gentiles' sake, until that branch of the Gentiles was taken at their final time at the end of the Gentile age. So awesome. So awesome. Right? I told you earlier we would show it again by going into Joel chapter 2. And here we are in Joel chapter 2. Blow ye the trumpet, sound the alarm in my holy mountain. Okay? This is the mountain of the Lord. The fire that devours before them. Hello. Isn't that exactly what we were just talking about? We go down further and we see, be glad, you children of Zion. Rejoice in the Lord your God, for he hath given you the former rain moderately. We've done a teaching on that. It's pretty wild. And he will cause to come down for you the rain, the former rain, and the latter in the first month. And the floors shall be full of wheat, and the vats shall overflow with wine. See, in the first month. What first month? The first month of the sowing and reaping time. See, because what? The wheat's now going to be full. Okay? All the floors will be full of wheat. Why? Because it's time of the great multitude. Then he's going to restore unto them. And it says, the sun and the moon shall be turned into darkness, and the moon to blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord. What's the great and terrible day of the Lord? Well, now you know what it is, right? And it says, and it shall come to pass that whoever shall call on the name of the Lord, remember, at that point, you'll just be able to call on the name of the Lord, shall be delivered, for in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem shall be deliverance, as the Lord hath said, and in the remnant in whom the Lord shall call. It's in Mount Zion. Remember this? Now we go to Zechariah chapter 8, one of our favorites. Zechariah chapter 8, right from verse 1. What is Zechariah chapter 8? Again, in the chapters to years, we see Zechariah 8 as like the 8th year. It's this time at the beginning of trumpets. And we see in verse 2, it says, thus saith the Lord of hosts, I was jealous for Zion with a great jealousy, and I was jealous for her with a great fury. Okay? Was jealous. We've taught on this many times over the years. In chapter 1, at about midway through, in verse 12, it says, I am jealous. Okay? And then they brought about my fury, or then they brought about the affliction. Okay? Because he is jealous at that time with a great fury, and he brings about, and they brought about the affliction because of the Lord's anger. When does that happen? At the end of 70 years in Zechariah chapter 1. It is all prophecy in Zechariah. And then it says, verse 3, thus saith the Lord, I am returned unto Zion, and will dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, and Jerusalem shall be called the city of truth, and the mountain of the Lord of hosts, the holy mountain. Why? Because the Lord has returned with heavenly Mount Zion and has come down. I don't know if it's sitting on Jerusalem. I don't know if it's above in the clouds. I couldn't imagine what this is going to look like. And then he says, he will gather them, boys and girls, and them in the streets. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, if it be marvelous in the eyes of the remnant of this people in these days, should it also be marvelous in mine eyes, saith the Lord of hosts? Thus saith the Lord of hosts, Behold, I will save my people from the east country and from the west country, and I will bring them, and they shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem. You see, the mid-trib great multitude is going to paradise. This group is going to Jerusalem. And there is a remnant of Israel and of Jerusalem that are going to, and the house of Judah that are going to Jerusalem. And it says, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God in truth and in righteousness. This is where it starts to get really awesome now. So we know he's there. We know he's on Mount Zion. Okay, this is the Lord. They've come down. We've seen it. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, let your hands be strong, you that hear in these days these words by the mouth of the prophets, which were in the day that the foundation of the Lord of hosts was laid. Which prophets do you think that is, brothers and sisters? You think the Elijah company? Okay. By the words of the mouth of the prophets, which were in the day that the foundation of the Lord of hosts was laid. When is it laid? Like in the midst of seals. It could only be the Elijah company. That the temple might be built. Meaning what? Obviously, the foundation had to be laid before the temple can be built. Foundation is laid in the midst of seals, then they can't rebuild yet until seals is done because the beast is there also, and it has to rest for 7 years. And then when the 7 years from when the foundation is laid, from when they were removed from the land, and then in the midst the foundation is laid, and then when the Lord is there, these destroyed the enemies that the Jews were looking for, and the decree is now to rebuild the temple on the foundation that was laid in the midst of seals. And it says in verse 10, for before these days there was no hire for man, nor hire for beast, neither was there any peace. You see what happens at the red horse rider? Peace is taken from the earth. Okay? Neither was there any peace to him that went out or came in because of the affliction, which is the beginning of tribulation at the 14 years. Officially, that's the tribulation beginning, although 50 days before is clearly going to be the beginning of things, right? And it says, for I set all men every one against his neighbor. What's that? That goes all the way back to Mark 13, verse 8, right? The beginning of the 14 years, the red horse rider. The great sword was given that they should kill one another. Nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, because his peace was taken from the earth. He's telling them. There was no rebuilding. There was no doing any of these things because it was the tribulation of seals. It was the time to bring about this devastation, to bring about this time of repentance for people to call out to me. And now I'm returned with the place that I promised to receive them to, and you guys are being brought back into the land. And what you've been told for a couple thousand years, that the blinders would come off of you, and that you would understand that when I come and destroy your enemies, when I come and decree to rebuild the temple, and it's getting rebuilt, and your two messiahs here, the Messiah ben Joseph, who is high priest and King Melchizedek, and the Messiah ben David, the branch, who is the modern day Zerubbabel. We are both now here. What's going to happen? The rebuilding of the temple. Who is going to rebuild it? Zechariah just told us who it was. Zerubbabel laid the foundation, and he will also finish it. Hello. He tells us why, because for 7 years there was no peace, no nothing. But now I will not be unto the residue of this people as in the former days. You see, they're no longer blinded to him. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, for the seed shall be prosperous, the vine shall give her fruit, and the ground shall give her increase, and the heavens shall give their dew, and I will cause the remnant of this people to possess all these things. And it says, verse 13, and it shall come to pass that as you were a curse among the heathen, O house of Judah, comma, and house of Israel. You see, both houses are now back there. Okay, the two sheep. Even though the first sheep after the lamb in John 21 is all of the Gentiles with the house of Israel, now the Gentiles are gone, they're raptured, and it's the house of Israel that remains, the remnant of them, and the house of Judah, the other sheep that he had to bring also, and they would be one sheep together. So will I save you, and you shall be a blessing. Fear not, but let your hands be strong. Because why? It's the time to rebuild the temple on the foundation that was laid. Awesome, right? Awesome, awesome, awesome stuff. And Now what happens at this point? Now what happens? We're at the start of trumpets, but remember what's happening in the midst of trumpets, right? Remember what's happening now. Here we are in the 7 years of trumpet judgments now starting. And in the first half of the trumpet judgments, we have 4 trumpets that are going to sound. From the first angel, second, third, and fourth. When the fourth angel is done, it says, and I beheld in Revelation 8:13, and I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the voices of the trumpets of the 3 angels which are yet to sound. Okay? The last 3 trumpet judgments are called the 3 woes. The first 4 trumpet judgments are going to be happening during the course of the first about 3.5 years of trumpets. Now, do they all happen very soon? Do they all happen one, a few months after the other? Is it, is there long breaks in between, but 4 of them play out over about 3.5 years? We don't know exactly, but what we do know is that the 5th trumpet is at mid trumpets, which is about a total of about 10.5 years into the tribulation. Hello. Remember what I was saying, that it's going to be about 8 years total? Because what happens is, where did we start? We started where the beast got his power, okay, right here, and we said it was going to be what? It was going to be 42 months, 1, 2, 3.5 years. And then where are we? That's 3.5. This would be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 years brings us to about right here. Okay? So what does this year matter for? Well, because you have 1, 2, 3, and about a half, right? Remember it was about 3.5 or 3 years and 2 months? Well, remember, there's further deeper mysteries that we're not going to go all into, but that's because I don't believe the 8th year is definitely going to start immediately right here. It's going to be similar to what we experienced here, where the 14 years on the sowing and reaping side has started, but it's not the official 14 years of the end. Okay, that's on the Nissan side, and the 50 days come first, but we're in it. And this is why that the days are going to be cut short, because what appears to be 6 will actually have played out in tribulation end of days about 5.5 years. Well, the same thing happens with the Lord gathering them back to Israel and into Jerusalem. Okay, that it won't happen till about the middle of the first year of trumpets. So when you look at it, you go 1, 2, 3, and a few months. You see what I'm saying? So you end up with that 3.5 years on this side. Hello. And now that 3 years and about 2 months starts to make more sense when you understand when this is all taken off. Not directly right here, but more so at that middle of year 1. And this is why when you go to Matthew's discourse, we see that it says that it will be a time in Matthew's that we'll get to at the final teaching, that it'll be worse than it was even in Mark's, and won't be that bad again. And it talks about the time being cut short as well. Why? Because for the same type of reason, it's not going to start till about right here at the rebuilding of the temple in the midst of the first year of trumpets, that by the time this plays out, it will have played out after 6 days or years in Matthew's, but it's really going to be as if it was, again, approximately 5.5 years before this portion came to an end here. Okay, but I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. So where are we now? We're right at this point, right in this time frame, give or take, right here, when they're going to start now rebuilding the city, streets, and temple. And you'll notice on this side, it's an actual 7 years coming to an end. Hello. But on this side, it's going to be in the midst of the first year. Again, you see, kind of lines up with what we were talking about at the beginning for seals and how it's cut short, compared to how trumpets is going to appear to be cut short, because of how this plays out to the end of the 14th year compared to how it plays out 6 months earlier on this side. Okay? So, what do we see now? This is going to be pretty chaotic, isn't it? when you think about what's going to happen in the first 3.5 years of trumpets, you have to remember that everything we just covered, they just saw a mountain ship type thing coming down from the sky. Remember in Daniel chapter 2, when the Lord comes, he's the stone, and it crushes the toes, which is a picture of the beast and the 10 horns, but it's the beast and the 10 toes in Daniel 2. And it says, and the beast comes crushing down. Why? Because the beast is killed, right? The beast and the 10 horns is killed at the end of seals. It's the picture of the Lord coming at the end of seals. And what does it say? It says, and that stone became a great mountain. You notice how people can never really find that association as to what it means in prophecy? Because they don't understand the point of the Lord when he's the stone that becomes a great mountain, because all they know is the Lord returns feet down on the Mount of Olives. So how could the Lord be coming and there be a great mountain? You see, we know what this great mountain is. So when you understand that at the end of the 6th year of seals, in that 7th year, what's going on with all the enemies of the Lord that destroyed Jerusalem and everything, and the 10 kings that were with the beast, they're all killed. They're all destroyed and they've been cast into hell. The people are literally freaking out because hundreds of millions of people will then poof, vanish in the mid-trib. And the Lord's gathering the rest of them to Jerusalem that are his people, of the natural house of Israel, of the branches grafted back in, and of the house of Jerusalem, the house of Judah. Even though we're only halfway through tribulation, what has just transpired at the end of seals is nothing short of just absolute jaw-dropping for everybody that's left alive on earth. Just consider that. So what's going to happen? Well, it's not going to be battles and enemies after they just witnessed what the Lord did against all the enemies. You see, it's not going to be that kind of craziness as the second half of seals. It's not going to be like World War III for the first half of seals. It's not going to be like the craziness of the beast at the second half of seals. This is now them having witnessed this come down and destroyed all of these enemies. Gather back his people to Jerusalem, that people will know, oh my goodness, this must be the Lord God. You see, whether they all come to him or not. We know that they're not all going to come to him, because what did it say in Psalms 110? It said that at this time, he's still going to rule, but he's going to do it in the midst of his enemies. He's going to be ruling in the midst of his enemies. Which means we know not all enemies are going to be defeated. We know that the dominion and power is taken away from the lion, the bear, and the leopard. We know that the false prophet isn't killed, and his power and dominion was taken away as well. So the Lord is still victorious, right? The Lord is still there in the midst of his enemies, but who's really coming against him? You see, so the only real thing that's taking place, and it's significant, are the first 4 trumpets. And these things are happening all around the earth, okay? And there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth, and 1/3 of the trees were burnt up, and 1/3 of the grass was burnt up. Yikes! That's pretty crazy stuff. And then you see the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th trumpet sound. Again, however long these play out as, but the total would appear to be over the first 3.5 years of trumpet judgments. Which is strange, because in the midst of all of this happening to the world, Jerusalem is being rebuilt, with the city streets and temple being rebuilt. Well, 1/3 of the earth is going up in flames. Crazy, right? So while it's going up in flames and Jerusalem is being rebuilt, remember what we shared not too long ago. In the midst of all of that craziness, what does it say? This is back in Zechariah 2, foreshadowing what's going to take place later. And it said, and he said unto him, Run, speak to this young man, saying, Jerusalem shall be inhabited as towns without walls, for the multitude of men and cattle therein. Remember, the wall that's being built isn't walls, it's the wall relating to the temple. And it says, For thus saith the Lord, for I, saith the Lord, will be unto her a wall of fire round about, and will be the glory in the midst of her. When do you think this is? When he's the fire coming down at the end of seals. You see, and he's going to be the wall of fire protecting from the enemies and from this chaos that's now raining down and destroying a ton of the earth. That, look at this, even a third of the stars, a third of the moon, right? Or sorry, what is it? A third part of the sun is hit, and a third part of the moon, a third part of the stars, so that a third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. Like, what? Imagine now being on the earth, not having come to Christ, still being an enemy of the Lord, and all of this is now happening after what you just witnessed at the end of seals. Oh my goodness, why wouldn't everybody just cry out to him, Lord, Lord? Craziness, right? Look, this is one of these things we've talked about many times over the years. Nobody can understand. We've shared it now and understood it for years, but Revelation 14, and I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on Mount Zion, and with him the 144,000 with his father's name written in their foreheads. If the Lord's returning feet down on the Mount of Olives, what's he doing on Mount Zion with the 144,000? As you know, because he's coming at the end of seals. Okay? When we come to Revelation 3, that's exactly what we see. This 144,000, they are represented by Philadelphia. Okay, again, behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews but are not. Remember, of course, there are those who say they are Jews but are not. But it's not all Jews. If it was all Jews, there would be no house of Judah. Hello. There are those who pretend, those who are fake, but it's a small portion compared to the actual true whole. Okay? And it says, look, behold, I will make them to come and worship before your feet, to know that I have loved thee. Okay? This is the one where hold fast, don't let anybody take your crown. It's the doors open that no one shuts, okay? Because they will have direct access. Remember, they will follow the Lord. The Lord will be with them wherever they go. The Lord is the high priest and king. He is the high priest over the 144,000. And this is the church of Philadelphia. This is the beginning of trumpets time. The Sardis one is the mid-trib. Okay, that is the mid-trib great multitude in the 7th year. The church of Thyatira went to the end of seals, and to the end of the 6th year of seals, which is when the Lord came. He's the star and a scepter. Okay, Sardis is now the end, that 7th year of seals time, at the coming of the Lord and the gathering of them, and clothed in white raiment, some of them. And then you have the start of trumpet judgments, which is the 144,000. And those who belong to the Lord, they'll be kept from the time of temptation, which is a portion with Satan. Hold fast unto thy crown. Okay, Philadelphia is the 144,000, is that picture and that representation. Now, in the midst of all of this, remember who the 144,000 represent as the Church of Philadelphia. Okay, as the Church of Philadelphia, what are they historically recognized as? Right? Since in the is from Christ until now. They're the missionary movement. Okay? They're the missionary movement. They are the evangelists. So they're the evangelists, the ones of the missionary movement in our modern quote unquote days, hundreds of years ago. That's what the 144,000 are. And so when is this happening? Well, we see in Revelation 12:5 the Son of Man coming, who's going to rule all nations with a rod of iron. We see the was caught up, and then we have the woman which fled into the wilderness, which, by the way, is probably, as a little side note, which is probably the Jezebel. Okay, remember, I will cast them into great tribulation with her, cast them into a bed with her, into great tribulation. Well, they're going to be what? If this woman is fled into the wilderness, okay, for 1,260 days, what happens at the end of 1,260 days? That's when Satan's cast down, and that's the point of the great tribulation. which is the midst of trumpets. Okay, the final 3.5 years, and that would be until the end of the 1260 days. So here we are now. The 42 months is done. The Lord has defeated them. They've seen all these things. We've covered all of this. And now what happens? You have the first four trumpets that are happening throughout the earth while Jerusalem is being rebuilt. And even though the Lord is in the midst of his enemies, there can't be overly that much chaos with wars, but the earth is, a third of these things are being burnt up and everything while Jerusalem is being rebuilt. But in relation to chaos and with wars and trying to come and fight and defeat the Lord, that's not happening. And so what's happening is, while the Church of Philadelphia, while the 144,000 are out being the evangelists, they're out during what? During the 1260 days. The 1260 days also represents what? It also represents the time of the two witnesses. Okay, the 42 months that came first until the Lord defeated them. Then you've got the two witnesses. So you got this first half approximately of trumpets, and you have the two witnesses that will prophesy for 1260 days. Who are the two witnesses? They are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks. Well, who are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks? All we have to do is go back to Zechariah chapter 4. The hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation, his hands will finish it. And we come down to verse 11. Then answered I and said unto him, what are these two olive trees upon the right side of the candlestick and upon the left thereof? And these are the two olive trees, two olive branches. And what does it say? It says, these are the two anointed ones. So he's not realizing yet that he is one of the two anointed ones. But we find out in Zechariah chapter 6. Okay, it talks about it when he was saying the two candlesticks and these are the two anointed ones. We find out that it's what? That it's Joshua, Yeshua, Jesus, the high priest, Messiah, who the Jews are waiting for the Messiah ben Ephraim, and the branch who is of the house of David, who is the Zerubbabel, who's going to build the temple, who was told that he laid the foundation and he will build the temple. And what's going to happen? That the council of peace shall be between them both. They are the two witnesses. It's literally right there in Scripture. And you have the 144,000 who are represented by Christ, by the Messiah ben Ephraim, who is the high priest and king over them. And what's going to happen now? These guys, the 144,000, are going out during that 1260 days, while the two witnesses are here and doing their things as the Messiah ben Ephraim and the Messiah ben David, the ones who the Jews were waiting for, one overseeing the rebuilding and one overseeing ruling in the midst of his enemies and overseeing the 144,000 who are going out and evangelizing during those 1260 days also. You see, this is what's going on in the earth. There's all of this third of everything being burnt up, which is crazy, while Jerusalem is protected and surrounded by God, and it's being rebuilt, and the house of Israel, the remnant, is brought back, and the house of Judah remnant are brought back, and the rebuilding is taking place, and it's being surrounded and protected, while heavenly Mount Zion is there, where the people taken to paradise are in it, in their spirit, right? They're in their souls, their spirit, they're in there now. So the chaos is the trumpet judgments themselves. It's not a people or a beast or any of that, because that is temporarily past. Because what's happened now is, in this 1260 days, we know that there can't be any of that chaos from the enemy yet, because he's just defeated them. And now the city streets and the temple are being rebuilt. This is why when we go back to Revelation 17 verse 8, we've completed the was, and now we have the is not. Okay? This is the mystery that we've shared, again, another teaching on its own that we've gone into, as to why when Mark's discourse is over at the end of the 6 years of seals, at the coming of the Lord on the day and hour no one knows, when we then come to Matthew's, which is about trumpets, we see in the first half there's no mention of false Christ, but we still have false prophets. This is all during the 1260 days. And then what happens? Then there's an abomination of desolation spoken about in Matthew. And this one in verse 15 says, stand in the holy place, or placed in the holy place. What is the holy place at that point? Well, the 1260 days are over. And when the 1260 days are over, all we have to do is go to Revelation chapter 12 and find out what happens when the 1260 days are over. It says, and there was war in heaven with Michael and his angels. So while the 144,000 are prophesying for 12, or are doing the evangelizing for 1260 days, you have the two messiahs that are doing their work as the two witnesses during the 1260 days and the rebuilding of the temple. And you have Michael and his angels warring against the dragon and his during the 1260 days also. And when the 1260 days of mid-trumpets are done, and all of this stuff on the earth was taking place, well, the Lord was there and he was reigning because nobody was coming against him now, and a third of everything was burning. Now that comes to an end. Michael has defeated the beast with his angels, and Michael's angels have defeated with him. And what happens? Satan, the great dragon, was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceived the whole world, and he was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. This is the point of the beast that was and is not shall return. In Daniel chapter 9, this is the point that it says after the about 3.5 years, which is a total of about 10.5 years, Messiah will be cut off. So the Messiah ben Joseph, ben Ephraim, right? The two Messiahs will be cut off. It says, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come, okay? Because why? Because the pit's going to be opened, shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. And unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. Now, we're going to go into the rest of this in the next teaching, or in the final part of this, whether it's the next one, God willing, or the one after. But we know that it starts with this time of the flood. And that's because in Revelation chapter 12, when the great dragon, when the beast is cast down, he knows he has but a short time. And it's going to now be, as Matthew says, and we'll get into it in the next one, it's going to be worse than it was for the second half of seals. But look at what happens. Remember, we said goes after them with a flood. So at the time of mid-trumpets, when the 1260 days are over, what remains is a time and half a time, which is the final 3.5 years of tribulation of the 14 years. And look at what it says. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood. What did we see in Daniel? He goes after them with a flood. And after going after them with a flood, as we saw, it says unto the end of the war. Now, why does it say unto the end of the war? Because when Messiah is cast out, when Satan is cast out and the pit is open, it says, when they have finished their testimony, which is the 1260 days, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them. Okay? Now we know. When is this war? At the end of 1260. When is Satan cast down? At the end of 1260. When Satan's cast down at the end of 1260, the pit is opened, clearly. And now the war is going to break out against them when he goes after them with a flood first, and then a war breaks out against them. And that war is a portion of the period of time at the end, which we will cover in the next teaching. You see, we're also now at the point of Zechariah chapter 11, when we see right here that in Zechariah 11, it says, 3 shepherds also I cut off in 1 month. This is going to be a big deal in an upcoming teaching before the end of the month, that I'm going to go into greater detail about this mystery. They're called shepherds, okay? 3 shepherds also I cut off in 1 month. My soul loathed them, and their soul abhorred me. Why? Because it's Satan, the beast, and the false prophet. Okay, at mid-trumpets, in the 11th year. Okay, Zechariah chapter 11. Look at this. In the 11th year, right in this portion of time right here. Okay, at the casting down, having lost his battle. Okay, in chapter 11 of Zechariah. And it says right here, then said I will not feed you. That dieth, let it die. That is cut off, let it be cut off. And let the rest of everyone eat, let the rest eat everyone the flesh of another. Remember, we're now talking about what's come down. Satan's cast down with his fallen angels, with his angels. And the pit is opened. So what was even a little bit craziness in the first half of trumpets, but calm in relation because the Lord was in power and in authority, when Satan's cast down and the pit is open, oh my goodness, it's going to be worse than it even was before. And it says, and I took my staff, even beauty, and cut it asunder, that I might break my covenant, which I had made with all people. Okay, now the covenant is being broken because of what the people have done. Okay, and with Satan being cast down and the pit being opened. So it's not the Lord breaking his covenant, but the people breaking the covenant because of what happened. And what does it say? Which I had made with all people. Hello. Because why? The Lord made a covenant, as we showed at the end of seals. Okay, right at the end of the 7th year of seals, he made that covenant with all people, with all nations. And it was broken in that day. And what do we find out? It just so happens that we find at this point in verse 12, and it says, and I said unto them, if you think good, give me my price, and if not, forbear. So they weighed for my price 30 pieces of silver. This is all part of another upcoming teaching. Not the third part of this, but it's going to relate to it in an upcoming teaching afterwards. It's very powerful in relation to who the Lord is fighting against and what has happened and who was defeated, who is called also a quote-unquote shepherd, even though he's the enemy, right? It's powerful. And it was all this price of 30 pieces of silver and what it means and what happens, because it's about an ox. An ox. And who is the Lord representing here as Messiah ben Ephraim? He is under the banner. He is representing the ox. So what's about to happen here in this 30 pieces of silver? We know the reason why. Luke mentions money, Mark mentions money, but only in the Gospel of Matthew do we read 30 pieces of silver. Okay? Do we read, 30 pieces of silver do we read in Matthew chapter 27. Why? Because prophetically, in the understanding of the differences of the Gospels, it's in Matthew because it's going to happen in the timing of Matthew in trumpets towards the end, or at this point, at the midpoint, by one who is deceptive against the Lord, and we see that covenant being broken. It's the exact same timing. And when does it happen? At the sounding of the 5th trumpet, which is the 5th angel when he sounds the trumpet. And I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth to give him, and unto him was given the key to the bottomless pit. Well, who is the star? I saw a star fall from heaven, right? I saw Satan, right? Barak fall from heaven. Okay? A star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given, okay? And unto him was given the key to the bottomless pit. That's mid-trumpets. When the key to the bottomless pit is open, that's mid-trumpets. This is why when the 1260 days are over and Satan is cast down, the pit is open, and who comes out of the pit? When they have finished their testimony, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them, overcome them, and kill them. That war will take 2.5 years, but we'll get into that in the next one. So what have we just covered? We have just covered from the beginning of the 42 months until his defeat, which is at the end of the 6th year of seals. There is 1 year of the 7th year of seals, and then another 3.5 years of trumpets, for a total of what I was explaining earlier is a total of 8 years unto the point of then him coming from the bottomless pit, him ascending from the bottomless pit. And we went from where? From right here in spring of 2028, 3.5 years to the end right here, the 42 months of the beast before he's killed, the 7th year of seals, then the 8th, and takes us to right here for a total of 8 years from where we ended the previous teaching. And in the next teaching, in the one that will be the final piece in this three-part series, it will take us from the end here to the Jubilee and briefly touch on the millennial reign. Brothers and sisters, it is so powerful. And even though this is another 3 hours and change, and the last one was almost 3 hours, combined will be 6 hours for these two teachings, and there's still one to go. You guys know it. This is still only just skimming so much of the surface. Even though there was a lot of incredible detail at some parts, it is still just skimming the surface as to all the places we could have gone into Scripture to prove all of this out. I promise you, brothers and sisters, this is the revelation of the end of days. We are a chosen remnant for this purpose, to receive, to be ready, to be prepared. We are a remnant being prepared to serve the Lord in the time to come. Be ready, be watching, and if you're not one of them, then you're being blessed to receive it, to understand, because you've been seeking and searching diligently. And let us be ready, watching and praying always, that we may be prayerfully accounted to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man in the lowest room of the third heaven, never having tasted of death, or to be girded about, ready to receive him upon his return, and to serve him in this time to come as his remnant. Brothers and sisters, I do believe the time is at hand. I believe the revelation has now fully made it clear in my understanding and belief. This, on top of it all, is the revelation that when it comes, we will be ready. I love you. God bless you. I appreciate you. Thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your support, and continue to help us reach many, many more in this short time that remains. God bless you. God bless your families. We'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.